Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, September 18th. As we always do, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jim?
Sure. I think we have some folks here for our 7 o'clock appointment. So as you all know, DPW Director Bob O'Brien retired last month, and we've been working on finding a replacement. I'm pleased to let the board know that we've done our search. It's complete. I am recommending that Rick Mattson, our current water superintendent, be appointed to serve as the DPW Director. You have a copy of Rick's resume there. And Rick's in the audience, and if you have any questions of me, or you'd like to handle it.
Nancy?
I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to reaffirm the appointment of Rick Mattson as our next DPW Director.
I'll second that for discussion, just because I want to say something. So I think I did participate with Jim in the interviews, and I thought we were in a great position where we had two highly qualified people who could run the department. And in the end, we decided to go with Rick Mattson, or Jim decided to go with Rick Mattson, and I think that's a great choice. I think the department is well served, and I look forward to continued great things from the department. So that's what I would say. And I'd open it up if anybody else has anything they'd like to add. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Great job.
Thank you.
Hey, Rick, could you swing by up here when you get a moment? We just want to shake your hand. It's sort of tradition,
Thank you, Jim.
Congratulations, Rick.
Congratulations.
Nice to have you around some more.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is a PowerPoint presentation of complete street policy, and we will be taking a vote of the board on the policy. Maggie, is that you?
Only to introduce our consultant, Bill Scully from Green International, whose PowerPoint presentation that is, and he will brief you on it. I just wanted to let you know, now that I can hear, so that many of the folks out there don't know, the complete street policy and plan that we're developing, we got a $39,000, $38,000 and change grant to fund the development of that plan and the policy in our project. Construction monies are part of the Tier 2, the Tier 3 process, which once your plan and policy is in place, and Bill will explain to you, it's a competitive grant process. So once our plan and our policy, the Tier 1 and Tier 2 are in place, then we will be qualified to apply for the grant monies, which can run anywhere up to approximately $400,000 is what it's been in the past, and what it may be in the future, depending on funding. So with nothing further, I'd like to introduce Bill Scully from Green International.
Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Again, my name is Bill Scully with Green International Affiliates. So we've been working with Maggie and the various departments on the Complete Streets effort in the community. And I'm going to go through, it's probably about a 15-minute presentation, if that's okay.
Sure.
You can go like this if you want me to speed up. I get into it and then I just start talking too much. But I'll try to give you a little bit of background on Complete Streets, the MassDOT program, and then the policy itself, a highlight of it. And I'll end with just a very brief update on the Tier 2 plan, what's referred to as the Complete Streets Prioritization Plan. Okay, so that's what I've just said. And so Complete Streets. This is taken from the Institute of Transportation Engineers with a little bit of their definition. And you'll see on the right side of the screen, it lists everyone. Pedestrians at the top, bicycle, public transit, all the way down to what's referred to as single occupant vehicles. It's a private car. And what you'll see 90% of the time is people are driving around by themselves. But essentially, the Complete Streets is a set of principles and processes that you have the street and the street right-of-way. You're trying to accommodate all the different user groups, make it safer, make it feel more comfortable, whether you're a walker, a biker, a driver, and we recognize that there's all these different users of the road. One thing that's happened over probably, I'll say 15 years or so, maybe a little bit more. You've heard a lot of the terms: traffic calming, safe routes to school, rails to trails, neighborhood traffic management. There's all these different things that we've dealt with over the last 15 plus years, and seems to have all coalesced into this concept, Complete Streets. It's been a growing thing for the last 5 or 6 years across the nation, as well as within the Commonwealth. All different groups. I'm an engineer. But the planners, representatives in the health profession, schools, there's a lot of diverse groups of people that all of a sudden the target is pointing in the same direction at the same thing of Complete Streets, making things better and safer in accommodating all different users. So this is just, again, this is from the National Complete Streets Coalition, and it just shows you the different types of users. So all users, all different age groups, the seniors, children, those with disabilities and need help in terms of getting up onto the sidewalk. You see the transit vehicle and the biker coming through a busy intersection. What we've found over the years with research and as we move to implement any kind of project, the Complete Street approach, it provides a safe movement for all users, and it really starts putting our mindset into making the design better, again, for a wider, broader group of users. We pay attention to the details better in terms of the ADA ramps you see in the center of town. You went through a sidewalk reconstruction project in the last couple of years. Real nice ramps, nice sidewalks, smooth travel. Crossing a street becomes safer. And interestingly, we found that you create an environment that people feel more comfortable, you end up with a stronger economy. That people like coming down to the center. Maybe there's benches outside, a restaurant. It becomes a more enjoyable spot. Becomes smarter growth as well. The next few slides are just some different examples. I don't know if you can see them that well. I think there was a handout that also has this. This right here is just an example of wider sidewalks, wide enough so that you can have some shade trees, bike racks, some chairs and tables. This is down in Thayer Street in Providence, actually. This is an area, an example of what we call a parklet. So in this particular case, they've taken one parking space and they've essentially extended out the sidewalk with a seating area where people can, again, take a break, sit down, congregate. And then these are a couple different villages where, here you have a bump out, so you reduce the crossing width. You make it wide enough, again, to have some amenities. This also has streetscape and some drainage aspects and drainage benefits. And here's a village, Hamburg, New York, upstate New York, and again, they've redefined the street through the center of town. We're not getting rid of vehicle travel, but we're trying to allocate that resource to all the different users. This is just a couple little examples of pedestrian movement. This is a bump out, and again, here's a sidewalk. They've kicked the curb out, and you've reduced the width that someone has to cross the street. This you have a couple of these in town. These are called rapid flash beacons. There's other similar kind of beacons, but again, they're to highlight to a motorist. Not necessarily they have to stop. It's not a red light, but you see it, you become more aware. And we found, I mean, people are slowing down or stopping as they get used to that type of technique. Bicycle accommodation, it doesn't have to be just bike lanes. On the left, that is a bike lane, and on the right is just a shared street. So it's all users are using the same pavement width, but that symbol, again, tells the motorists, be aware this could be a priority biking street, so pay attention. Again, bike accommodation. And pretty much everything I'm showing you are eligible actions as part of the MassDOT program. There's additional actions that are eligible: reconstructing an existing sidewalk, extending a sidewalk, making the crossing better. Here in transit shelter, transit signage, or in here there's a little lamppost that's geared to the transit stop with some information on the post. And again, just trying to provide better service, which then makes transit users more comfortable in using it. So we get to the policy, and I'll go through the MassDOT program, but people say, well, why do I need a policy? These 4 bullets sort of outline the basic concepts of it, but it starts to change the way we approach a problem, a transportation problem. It starts, having the policy starts to change our practice and in our thought process, decision making. The policy shows a commitment by the municipality on giving the practice of complete streets a consistent level of importance, and then it shows a commitment to think about the whole public right-of-way. To be better planned and designed to accommodate that. Gradually, it's hopefully with the policy in place, and it's something that doesn't turn on a dime. It might take years to develop your network to be accommodating everywhere that you want it or need it to be. And then in the state of Massachusetts, with the state's program, then it also makes the town eligible to secure or be eligible for funding grants. And as Maggie had said, the Tier 3, which is the implementation, you'd be eligible to apply for up to $400,000 per year, although it doesn't quite work as well as that sounds, but you'd be eligible for that. So the MassDOT program, as I said earlier, I mean, there's really been a big movement across the country. Most of the state DOTs are emphasizing in some way complete streets. Massachusetts probably, in my opinion, one of the leaders of it. And it's a very unique program where the way MassDOT implemented, they worked with the Mass Department of Public Health, came up with the program. It was legislated, so they were directed to start to put it in. Probably goes back even to, I think Governor Patrick was the one who signed in the Healthy Transportation Policy Act, or policy, which forced MassDOT people to start to think about these things as a private developer or the public projects were going through the process on how to encourage that healthy transportation. So with the MassDOT program, they ended up developing an approach that actually hands municipalities funds to plan and implement the complete streets. So in a lot of different areas, you're encouraged to develop a policy, encouraged to do your projects like that. But in this case, it was DOT trying to say, how can we make municipalities, for their local roads, really push the policy, adopt it and get the practice going. The goal of the program was really start getting things on the ground. It provides the assistance, the funding assistance, the incentives. They developed a training program. As part of their program, they required municipal staff to attend the training program, which I know Maggie did. I don't know if an additional person in town did. But periodically, they'll come around and have another offering, and DOT personnel will talk about complete streets and the current findings across the country or in the state, different ways you can do things. So in the end, the program, in everyone's mind, is then facilitating better travel for everyone. The 3 tiers are policy, plan, and implementation. So policy, the policy that's before you, if adopted, it will be submitted into Mass DOT. They will score it. They will look at they've given a guideline as to how they'd like to see it. They know that there's national research and other ideas coming in, but they will go through it and score it. And as long as it gets an 80 or more, then they will adopt it. The town did file earlier this year a letter of intent with DOT that said, we're going to work on a policy. It's going to take us some time, but we want to move forward with the program. What that letter of intent allowed the town to do was apply for a grant to start working on the plan.
Stop for 1 second, Bill.
Can you tell me how the plan or the guidelines or the suggestions deal with like scenic roads, scenic walls, and historic sites? Are there any guidelines that are coming down from the state? Like in our town, we have some scenic roads and scenic walls that we protect on those scenic roads and trees, and then we have some historic sites that are non-compliant on roadways. You know what I mean? So they kind of cause for lack of sidewalks and narrowing of some streets and things like that. How does the Mass DOT, I guess, feel about that, and then how does that reflect our scoring?
That's a great question. The scoring, it won't. The complete streets and the principles and the DOT program, in theory, is also context sensitive. So in your context, so your scenic road or your corridor, or we're working in the town of Boxborough, and it's extremely rural. Almost all the roads were scenic roads and 20 feet wide. And we're having this specific discussion a little bit with DOT now for Boxborough's plan, because Boxborough is not going to widen all these roads to do certain. So there's techniques within the complete street toolbox, let's say, to again, what is your goal? Your goal is to provide better connections, provide choices for your residents or workers to travel, whether walking, biking, driving, in a more safe manner. So there's a lot of tools in there, which could be just markings and signage or different things to try to, let's say, reduce traffic speeds without widening the road, do certain things.
But at any point, could a developer or a resident that's coming to, widen their driveway or clear the walls out in front of their house, put in a sidewalk for better access, things like that, could they use this plan against us when it's a scenic road?
No, but they would, no matter what, even in, let's say in this particular program, in this, let's say the plan, I'm not going to pick any street. I'm just going to say Street A, you said, this is a really critical street that there's people biking up and down it all the time, and there's traffic on it. It would be great to widen it out to accommodate, but it's a scenic road. Now, if through it, some of these projects and what the state will not pay for in this program is engineering and permitting. So let's say the thought was, this is the best way to go. Well, number one, you're going to have to go through the planning board and scenic road and the impact, and you may not even be approved to do that change.
I'm not even looking at it, so I think this is great, say downtown, this is probably where, or East Walpole, where we would say, we want to get this plan adopted because we want to be available for the money. We want the money to be available for us, and we do want to make all of that nicer. But could this plan be sitting on a shelf somewhere, and somebody that is trying to develop somewhere else say, is, say they're not going through the planning board process in the correct way, or I mean, they're going through in the correct way, but it's not looking favorable, and it's because, you know, a road's too narrow, there's way too many turns. Like South Walpole, we have some roads that are some sharp turns and things like that. Could somebody say, well, I really think that you should approve this because it is consistent with your MassDOT street plan? You know what I mean? Like, could it be turned back on us as far as that goes from a potential developer looking in?
I don't think so. But let me finish going through it, because I might answer some of those questions that are built into the policy. And just before I do that, so let's say a developer is going in with a project. You know, I mean, a developer coming in town is a building project. So that what the policy will and does enable the town to do is to ask the developer to be, can you do something to be consistent with our complete streets policy? And I'll just give you some minor, I don't know, some examples of that. Let's say it's a subdivision, residential subdivision, and let's say the developer didn't want to do sidewalks. Oh, but you have a policy now that you're really trying to make connections to the public sidewalk system. Or maybe there's a crossing that's not as visible as it should be, or handicap ramps along an existing sidewalk where much of the impact's going to be occurring. That's something that the planning board could work with the developer to say, hey, you know what, if you can do these three things, that's consistent with our policy, you're helping us out, as well as, you know, if it's minimizing an impact, but you're helping implement the policy. I don't believe that it could be the policy or the program. It's transportation, and it's positive things where you're you know, trying to implement things to make things safer or connected better. So I'm not sure how a private party coming in with a project could use the policy as a way to, or someone could use the policy as a way to negate the development or get out of something. Now, a tight turn on a narrow road, that's different from the complete streets policy. That might be, you may need curve warning signs, or, you know, sight distance improvements, or, you know, I can remember doing some work on, I think it was Plimpton, you know, with some of the development and the curves down there going underneath the, I think the railroad bridge or around there. So let me finish going through, and then if I haven't answered that question, I'll try to do a better job. So right now, DOT initiated the program in early 2016, and they started out with training sessions and then really kicked off the program and looking at policies and issuing Tier 2 planning grants in about May or June of 2016. So in about 2 years, they have registered about 200, a little over 200 communities with the program, and 174 policies have been submitted and approved. So all of the colors that you see on the map, and that's probably a few weeks old, but all of those different colors are some level of involvement in the program. So the town of Walpole is a registered community in the process of developing a policy. So they're colored in a certain color. 116 Tier 2 plans have been developed and submitted, and then there's been 95 awards for Tier 3 implementation since late 2016, totaling about $30 million. A few of those awards have gone to communities that have put in for a second award. So they've gotten their first award, they've implemented, they've cleared all the funds and everything's done, and they've put in a request for a new award, and a couple of them have been awarded that. It's certainly more competitive now than it was 2 years ago, as everyone is seeing sort of the benefits of it. It's a fairly simple program. It again is geared to getting something done very quickly. If you're familiar with like the MassWorks program in the state, where they're going to give you an award and they want things ready to go. So if things aren't ready to go, they don't want you, wasting time in applying. With the policy specifically, so it's to cover these 6 major areas: vision and purpose, core commitment, exceptions, best practices, performance measures, and implementation. Vision and purpose, is very broad, very goal-oriented, but it's basically saying the town is for enhancing and providing safe transportation accommodation for all users, and the decision makers, staff will work towards that, whether it's for planning, design, operation, or construction. The core commitments, again, they're outlined in the policy, but it's making sure you're considering all modes of travel. So modes of travel being walking, biking, transit. We had some people commenting in the plan process, requesting some transit shelters, in fact, on a couple of spots. And the policy not only applies to town projects, and maybe this starts to get where you were coming from, but it also, even though the program is geared to the locally owned roadways, so not a state-owned road. But if the state comes through with a project on their road, you have a policy in place that says, you know what, we want pedestrian, someone, let's say south on 1A, going towards Norfolk and Rentham. If they come through with a reconstruction project, there's with a policy in place, you can say, it should be sidewalks on both sides of the street.
Can we do that with railroads?
Can we do that? No, but well, I don't know if this is.
Don't worry.
You're doing good.
Yeah,
Just keep going.
Okay.
We're having trouble with railroads. So.
Right.
And private developments. So in the policy, there was a paragraph in there that as a private development comes in with the policy in place, then the planning board or zoning board is able to say, okay, how is your project consistent with our complete streets policy? It also has in their section where the different departments over time will take elements of complete street principles and start to update some of their own regulations to make sure it's maybe better defined, better guidance given to applicants. So in the policy, there's also, one of the DOT's goals were to encourage complete streets and get people really thinking and going in that direction, but they really didn't want to make it complicated and problematic. So there is a section in here where we define exceptions so that certain types of facilities or where costs and impacts are significant. So let's say you were going to work on a project and you really wanted sidewalks on both sides, but to do that, it was going to affect private property. You were going to have to do acquisition or whatever. The impacts and costs were going to be excessive for the benefit you were getting. Is there another option? Then this exception to the policy allows the town to say, hey, look, we want to go there. We can't easily, so we have another alternative. Also, ordinary maintenance activities would be exempt from the policies. Ordinary activities like resurfacing an existing roadway. There's a section in there on best practices and performance. So again, see the first bullet, considering the context of where you are. So if you're in the center or if you're on the edges of town where it's pretty much woods and vegetation, those would be taken into account as you evaluate a project. Coordination among all the town departments, and then we've outlined or given some information of where to obtain some of the latest design practices and guidance as the town moves forward to implement complete streets. Much of it is with Mass DOT, but there's a lot of other guidance out there that provides fairly interesting options. And then what DOT wants the town to do is over time, you want to see how you're doing. You know, if we've got a plan, you're being funded, how is implementation of that plan or policy being accommodated? Right now, there is no follow-up reporting needed to the state. I'm not saying that will come at some point. Again, we're moving into probably the third year. So as they've been distributing funds and they're seeing projects implemented, they could come back and say, hey, how about an update to your plan? Or, you know, can you give us a brief report? But I will say, based on our experience with almost 15 communities, is that it's been fairly straightforward, fairly simple. Once you're in the process working, you're pretty much dealing with the state aid engineer in the district or the Complete Streets engineer in Boston. It's not like a what you've heard TIP projects, a big long design process. I mean, we've done at Littleton as an example, a plan. They applied for implementation, got the grant, and in a year they had a plan and the sidewalks and the speed feedback sign all in place. So implementation, and again, the last part of the policy talks about a permanent committee to be designated by the board. Suggestions are in there. It's mostly department heads, and again, a wide cross-section. And the committee would monitor the progress of that plan. The policy encourages town staff to continue to be trained with Complete Streets and stay up to date. And the committee could be asked by the board, you know, for advisory opinions on if someone came before the board for an exception. And I'll end there and answer any, or try to answer any
I'll
other
open it up for
questions.
questions. Anybody want to start with a question? David, do you have anything?
Sure. So how did this policy get created? What group?
The policy, so we developed a draft with the Tier 2 plan that's been in the process has been a committee form, so we developed a draft of that. The committee had a chance to review it a couple times. We got input and suggestions, so we updated, finalized it. So that, and again, we started with Mass DOT template in terms of information they wanted, plus some national information as
The
well.
committee was in-house people.
That's correct.
And how did the outreach take place?
The outreach not to the policy. The policy outreach, really the public airing of the policy is here.
Okay.
We did do an outreach as part of working on the plan. We did an online outreach so that we put information out on the website. They could take that even further. We gave them an understanding of Complete Streets and go on an online map basically and tell us whatever they wanted to tell us in terms of issues and problems.
And the funding for your services came from where?
Came from that Tier 2 planning grant from DOT.
Nancy?
Really just the only thing that, I mean, I know that it does say the exceptions where Complete Street practices contradict other town policies and regulations. I would like it to be somewhere right out there that something that's very important in Walpole is its scenic roads, walls, and historic sites. And not to be, you know, those come before any kind of,
So it wouldn't supersede scenic road. They'd have to, if someone wanted to do something, Complete Streets, you still have to go through the scenic road.
right, but
process.
just to mention that there's high value in this town on the scenic roads, scenic walls, and the historic sites.
If I can go back.
Please.
So the last paragraph of the vision and purpose too, as it's stated in the exceptions part, that there can be restrictions for certain uses of certain roadways. They can restrict trucks and possibly, you know,
That's under the exceptions.
yeah, well, so
So a lot-
the
so-
last line of the vision and purpose says, while ensuring basic accommodations are met for all users, perhaps something that says all users you know, where practical, or where I'm not sure that all roads, in that statement, it said, I could envision a situation where you say, okay, this road is so, there's a couple of spots on 1A where we ought to be telling bikers, for instance, right here, you might want to walk your bike because there's no room for you to be in the road. And so I wonder if that should be more broad, that says, you know, in some cases, all uses may not be allowed. And certainly, there are going to be some cases where we already say trucks can't be allowed, are not allowed. And that part of that is addressed in the exceptions, but I just thought that vision, that last statement of the vision could have that
All right,
exception.
let me work on that.
Yes, something like that.
One of those things in the exceptions was DOT just wanted to make sure everyone knew also that, and it probably may not apply in Walpole, maybe a little bit, like on the I-95, you can't be a pedestrian or a biker, you know, so types of facilities that, you know, you're just not going to accommodate that.
Thanks. Ian?
Yes, I think this question is directed to a few people.
Sure.
Jim, I know that we have the grant for the downtown revitalization study. How would the results of that fit in with this complete streets policy? And I'm assuming that once the board appoints a committee, the committee that you were referring to here, this complete streets committee, that the results or recommendations of the downtown just being one aspect of the town, being integrated into this policy. Just for example, if they suggested more benches, the study.
Well, right now they're separate, but I can tell you that once these guys do their work with engineering and DPW, I was going to include engineering and DPW in the downtown study. We would definitely, if these legitimate proposals or recommendations, we would try to incorporate that into the
So to the extent,
outcome of the plan.
right, so to the extent that some of the recommendations from the grant, from the study, mesh in with this, we would be able to apply some of these funds or our requests for that purpose?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So that's something we would have an eye towards integrating, right?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks, Mark, and apologies, I arrived a bit late, so if you covered this, that's fine, you can just tell me. But section 5, performance measures, first of all, did you cover that before I got here?
No, I didn't.
Okay. I'd like to talk about that a little bit, only because I want to make sure I understand, you know, what the actions that come out of the performance measures are. So we measure something, and we measure for some purpose. What is the purpose? What is the outcome? And what does that process look like as you're going through the performance measures?
Okay, so that's really going to be up to the permanent committee on complete streets. The policy outlines some potential measures that they could use, but the idea is we've gone through 38 miles of local roads. I think at one point we had identified like 300 deficient spots, come up with 30 projects to go into the DOT at this point, and some of those projects contain multiple, you know, actions to take care of some of the 300. So the idea is you have a plan, you have a mechanism of potentially funding the plan, or funding some of it, and it's just a way you want to measure how we, you know, if we had 5 miles of sidewalk in disrepair, you know, well, in 2 years, hey, have we made some progress? The committee periodically, and again, it'll be up to the committee, not me, but the idea is periodically that committee will meet, maybe every quarter, maybe twice a year, and just go, okay, oh yeah, these 3 projects we have funded, are they done? Yeah, they're done, and okay, what are we going to do next? Or how, you know, again, how have we been doing? Right now, it's really internal. It's to the town. It's to the committee. DOT wants, so they want they want the plan to be a living document, so that, you know, they want to encourage the town, keep going, you know, implement. You can come back at some point and update it. They don't want a town to get their first grant fund, do that job, and never again be heard from, you know? So the mechanism, I think where they want is that committee to monitor. And if you're gonna monitor, maybe there's some easy ways to do that. And maybe it's number of ADA ramps that were fixed this year. Maybe, and maybe some of this is already done. I mean, if DPW is coming in for their annual thing, they I know, report to the town, here's what we did last year.
Let me tell you where I was thinking about it. So the things you've just talked about are all, you know, measurable improvements, okay? I'm thinking about, you've got a road layout that has a certain width to it. And in the shareability of the road layout, what if we were to determine that for what, and make it up, we had a bike lane, and we suddenly find that by adding the bike lane, we've created some kind of a traffic problem. How do we pick up on those kinds of things? And again, what's the action that would then come out of it? Do you follow me?
I do. So that's a good question too, but it's a little bit difficult, you know, because the policy and where you want to be going is, and we're trying to make it good for all users.
Of course, yeah.
So is moving traffic, you know, this comes up every time we do a study in the center, and everyone goes, oh my God, getting through the center and
Right.
at 4 p.m., you know, but by, you know, 5:15, I'm getting through the center all right, you know, or something. So, this, you know, doing an action, and again, much of it may not change a thing. You may be on Washington Street and say, you know, we have a chance to stripe the road differently than we do today.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, we narrowing the travel lanes. We're not taking a lane away, but narrowing it, and now the people are going to drive a little slower, and they got a little bit more room on the side to bike. So that really is very little change. So I hear what you're saying. I guess if it got down to that part where you tested something and implemented, and then you said, oh my God, this was a mistake.
Right.
Then I guess there's nothing that says you can't, you know, regroup and go, okay, what did we do wrong? Does it need tweaking? Maybe we shouldn't have taken that right turn? Or maybe deleting the right turn lane really wasn't the worst thing in the world. Yes, I know, people are delayed a little bit, but there's nothing that says you can't go back and evaluate.
would if we had to unwind it, so we get grant money to do the project, but if we had to unwind it, would we get more grant money to unwind it, or would
I
we
would
have
say
to
probably
unwind
no,
Yeah, that's what I would
but
guess, too.
again, so this is up to $400,000.
Yep.
A grant. So unfortunately these days, $400,000 does not go far.
That's for sure.
So while an eligible action, and one thing I did want to mention because of you mentioned the downtown revitalization. So one thing with the committee, we went through sort of an education process as well. So the committee is quite aware of types of actions that could be eligible for this, or forgetting the eligibility, just some things that would make life maybe better. So anyways, where was it going? So even though you could have a intersection reconstruction be an eligible action under this program, you know, that will take design,
Yeah, that'd be a lot more.
public
than
outreach,
$400,000.
and
Yeah.
really come to grips with. So you're not even going to apply for something like that
Yeah.
until you really have your plan done. So I think you're protected in that way.
I think you've answered my question, and thank you for that. I guess what I would simply ask is that when we look at the performance measures, and absolutely, we should be counting things like how many more sidewalks and how have we made streets ADA accessible and all that. Those are all very positive things. We should do that. But I also want to make sure that we've thought about adverse impact and how do we measure that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
So Nancy?
So the committee, it doesn't have to be a committee at large, it can be an in-house committee.
That's correct.
So my thoughts on this would be somebody from DPW, somebody from the Board of Health, from the Walpole Police Department, the Historic Commission, engineering, the planner, and then probably Pat Shields as someone from our office. And that they would meet during work, there'd be staff, because they're the ones that definitely know the projects going on. They represent some boards, so they know the feelings of the boards, and they can bring the information back. But they can look to see what is going on in town and meet regularly, twice a year or 4 times a year quarterly, and then report back to all of us and see if there is more information or if there's something that needs to be changed or is going on, or if somebody wanted to bring something to them, they could. Kind of like a design review committee, but yet for this policy.
Did you see top of page 5?
No.
So under, first paragraph under implementation. Those are just suggestions, and you listed everything good. In fact, you had the historic, which we didn't put in there, but we do have someone from Council of Aging, Recreation Department, School Department, as
Right.
possibilities.
Yeah, so I'm thinking though also that it's people that are here and working, and so they actually know what's kind of happening anyway, and how to get things done and bring the real stuff to the table, because, we also have like a master plan implementation committee, that, we have an affordable housing committee, especially where we want to do safety before accessibility and things like that. I think these are the players that know what can and can't be done.
Jim, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that works for me. I mean, if that's, does the rest of the board agree?
Have you considered anyone from the EDC, Economic Development?
I could reach out to them. We can make it as big as or as small as you want, so.
I mean, right now, we don't have a planner anyway, so they could take the planner spot.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to make a couple quick comments. I like the idea, especially as Nancy said earlier, for downtown, for East Walpole, maybe some parts of Route 1, and especially because as I travel around New England, but Massachusetts especially, parts of Brookline, Newton, the Seaport downtown are great areas where the sidewalks are big, there's lots of people, there's enough room for bicycles, traffic lanes are not impeded, there's good crosswalks. They've done a great job of saying, we're going to have a ton of people here on a nice day, and we need to deal with all of that flow. And I think that there's some improvements we can make, to those areas in Walpole, and really make it a better experience for people and move people through easier, and oftentimes have a place for a bike and park cars and all that. So I love the concept and look forward to moving ahead with it. So, any other comments or questions? Nancy, you want to make a motion?
Sure. Well, are we going to completely approve the policy right now, or are we gonna,
There was some language changes.
a
there,
couple
so-
little language changes?
and then we can-
We can try to work those changes in.
Did you need it today, or can
No.
we see it in 2 weeks?
And you need to reappear.
Originally, there was a much tighter time frame than we thought, but they've changed, the Complete Streets folks in Boston have changed their time. We thought we had to get this in within the next week or two, and we don't. They
Okay.
changed submission orders, so we have time to get those edits in and get it back at a future.
That'd be great. I think you've heard that we're generally in favor of it, and a few little tweaks, and
Yeah,
it's a good idea. So
is it fair to say from the board that we're looking for just the protection of, or noting of the scenic trees, roads, and historic sites, that they supersede other things, and that safety is before accessibility, and then maybe mention this is the implementation that we're looking for a committee? Does that sound fair?
Adding language where, I think your concern was, by example, on the first page where, while ensuring basic accommodations are met for all users, as practical, or, some sort of caveat. That was sort of.
Caveat of how they put, how you will word
We can do that, 'cause
safety
we've
before
inserted that
accessibility.
phrase in a couple different spots, so we can work something in there too.
Yeah, and just the high value on the historic stuff and scenic stuff. And then do we, instead of them just making a recommendation, do we like having somebody from someone appointed from DPW a new designee from the Board of Health office, Robin's office, Police Department, Historic Commission, Engineering Department, Planning / EDC, and then, your Pat, or basically your designee. You got that, Maggie?
And that
Okay.
list can be broader now than we actually implement, right? We can
Right.
decide to drop one of those off.
Yeah.
This is just not limited to this or required to do that.
That's why I believe right at the end of that statement, that he has already in there about the committee, it said, or others as the
Right.
board so
Yep,
chooses. So it
that'd be
makes it
great.
fluid in case you find out that somebody else really, another representative of another department really needs to be included.
Yeah, that
Great.
sounds good. So do you want, so are you good then with this, and we'll see, like, 2 weeks?
See, when, whenever, just talk to Cindy, we'll get you back on the agenda.
You can do that as soon as it's ready to present, absolutely.
That'd be great.
Thanks for all your work.
Thank you.
Mark, I know we're a little behind, but since we got Maggie here, she's looking for a vote for the reimbursable for the complete streets tier 2.
Okay.
This is related.
Yep.
We're gonna talk about that.
Where's that?
The reimbursement, if the board recalls how Chapter 90 works, the,
Which item is that, Jim?
That's under new business, under the first
yeah,
voting
yeah.
item.
9:30?
the reimbursement for, it's the grant that pays for our design services is run exactly the same the way Chapter 90 is. Basically, we expend and they get reimbursed. So the vote you're taking tonight to submit that is the same vote you take on a Chapter 90 street. It's the same forms, the same people, the same reimbursement process.
It's just more or less us getting our money back from the state.
Okay, I'll make a motion to sign the state aid reimbursable program for complete streets tier 2 for $36,955.54.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion? All in
Thank you.
favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So I want to just do something procedurally. Jim was stuck in traffic, and I know that he wanted to be here for the reaffirming the town administrator's appointment of Rick Mattson. So I'm going to make a motion to reconsider our vote on the reaffirming the town administrator's appointment of Rick Mattson.
Second that.
We have a second. Motion is second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So now I'm going to make a motion to reaffirm the town administrator's appointment of Rick Mattson as DPW director. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion?
Just quick discussion.
Okay.
So wanted to just make sure that I said publicly that you have my wholehearted support on this. I think Rick is an outstanding choice for this role, as you and I have talked. I also want to publicly thank Bob O'Brien for his years of service here in the town. So that's really all I wanted to make
You
sure.
missed the big audience.
Yeah.
It was full
Yeah,
earlier, so
well,
you're watching it
you
TV.
know, I guess next time I'll be on time.
Fix that. We can edit them back in.
So we have
It
a,
might be more, you could have taken your bike if there was a bike
Yeah,
lane.
exactly, yeah.
so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep, thanks, Jim. Next up, we have a discussion on fees at Adams Farm for the use of the property. Do you want to be here for that?
Jack,
I don't see Jack.
thought I saw Jack.
I don't see-
right.
I thought I saw
Why don't we hold
earlier,
that,
too.
and we'll see if, maybe he's run down the hall to one of the other meetings. Next up, we have an update from British Beer Company on the status of the all-alcohol license. Is there anybody here from British Beer? Come on up.
Mark, I'm just gonna go see if he's.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Gary Simon from the British Beer Company. The license has been dormant now since December 31st, and we are willing to cooperate with the landlord to transfer it to a future tenant if they have one. At this time, I have not been contacted about a tenant, so I'm here to say whatever it is you need me to say.
So I think the question is, I don't know if we can hold a license indefinitely, and that's something you could give us some guidance on, Cindy.
I spoke to Gary today and explained to him that I had received a call from somebody saying they were interested in the transfer, but they haven't touched base with him yet.
I have yet to hear anything. We're certainly willing to transfer it to whomever will come in. Waiting.
Right.
Nancy?
So my question is, how long does,
Well, the renewal season's coming up,
right,
so I explained to him that if nothing happens between now and November 30th, he would be responsible for renewing that license, or it gets automatically turned back into us.
I would not be renewing it.
Okay,
So,
okay. Any other questions?
So
No.
The rule is it can't be dormant for 6 months. What happens after the 6 months?
Well, what happens is the ABCC said after 6 months, we should call the people in to find out what the status is.
Okay.
I have, an attorney did contact me, the end of last week. I sent her information. I have not heard back, but they have not reached out to the British Bear Company as of yet to transfer.
So it doesn't revert all back to the town right away, only upon renewal?
Correct. If he doesn't renew, it will come back to us.
So let me just ask you another question. I know you've got multiple BBC sites, and
Correct.
are you considering another site in this area, or?
No,
are you
not
no
at this
longer? Okay, that was my question. I used to go to the BBC, so, it's gone now, so. But I wish you good luck.
Landlords are here if they want
Okay.
to tell you whether or not they have somebody in place.
Okay.
That's up to them.
Would the landlords like to make a statement, or do you have anybody that's coming along, or? Just introduce yourself for the vast TV audience.
Right. Ari Arian, the landlord at 85 Providence
Welcome.
Highway. Thank you. Currently, we have a couple of potential tenants that we are in negotiations with. Obviously, we aren't to the point where they've contacted the license holder. We are also now, after 6 months, considering operating there ourselves. No official decision has been made. No offer has been made from any tenants, so that's why we're kind of in limbo. Now we know November 10th is when we need to make a decision.
Yeah, so if you do it by November 10th, it's easy. It can be transferred, right?
Well, that'd be really hard. See,
Okay, so
we're
why don't
getting
you
into a really, explain
Getting into the
this.
gray area.
Well, the problem is that they have until November 30 to get all their paperwork in. So if you go and apply for a transfer now, the board has 30 days to take action. We have to advertise, and now you're talking at least a few weeks. Then it goes to the ABCC after you approve it, and that takes time. So now we're in a sticky situation where the deadline is November 30th, that the transfer may not be approved by them in time. So that would mean British Bear would have to renew it, or they would have to pay under their name to renew it. In other words, he could renew it, but you'd have to pay for it, and then
So,
it's very tricky this time of year. I really hate when people do stuff this time of year. It's hard.
We should close down.
Go ahead, David.
so basically, if there is an agreement between the current holder of the license and somebody else, then it would just be, we would only be able, our only role would be is if we find that person to be not a proper license holder, we could deny that license.
Correct.
But if there is not an agreement by that November 30th, the license comes back to us, and we can
Right.
we can give it to whoever we want.
Then somebody would apply for a new license, not a transfer.
So,
What is the wait process? How does that differ, a new license from a,
It's the same.
and how long?
mean,
So when
there are
is,
some of our things that you've approved are sitting out there at the ABCC, and they've been there for months.
but there could be
So-
someone with a beer and wine license right now that, when that license comes back to us, they'll be ready to apply for a full
Right.
license.
Correct.
Because it'll be available.
how long, and November 30th, if it's not renewed, is it back to us by the
It's
1st?
automatically to us. Automatic,
So a new application could come in to us on the 1st.
December 1st, correct.
So you got a timing issue, so just sort of figure out
Yeah.
what you
yeah,
can
we
do when you're ready,
Right,
and then
It just gets tricky.
Yep.
you can always come and talk to Cindy, and she can give you some guidance. So,
Thank you.
good luck. Next up is a public hearing for street acceptance of Warren Lane and Atlantic Court. So, I guess I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for the street acceptance of Warren Lane and Atlantic Court.
Second.
Motion a second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Maggie?
Good evening. I have boards with the map, if anybody would like me to put them up. I didn't put them up because I'm assuming everybody knows, but if you want me to put them up, if you think the television audience needs to know, I can.
Why don't you keep going, and if we need to pull them up,
Okay.
we can, so.
Both of these streets are finished with subdivision control. The bonds have been released because we've told the planning board all the bonded items have been taken care of satisfactorily through our department. All the inspections have been made. And this is just the latest step before it goes to town meeting for authorization.
Okay, any questions for Maggie?
No?
So you want to make a motion, Nancy?
Any public?
Oh, I'm sorry, is there any public here to ask any questions about these two streets? Anybody? Nope, okay, thank you.
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll second that. We have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. So, Warren Lane?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to adopt the order of layout for Warren Lane from station 0+00 ± to station 7+50 ±.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. I'll make a motion to sign the order of layout documents for plans for Warren Lane and to have it filed, on file in the town clerk's office.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. I'll make a motion to adopt the order of layout for Atlantic Court from station 6+95.67 to station 10+7352.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. I'll make a motion to sign the order of layout documents for plans for Atlantic Court and to have it on file in the town clerk's office.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Do we have to sign them now?
No, I can pick those up tomorrow, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. So next up is a hearing for Eversource vote grant of a new pole location, East and Glenwood Streets. Is there anybody here from Eversource? Welcome. Just please introduce yourself for the TV audience.
Christine Cosby, Eversource Energy.
Great. What questions do we have, if any?
Name for me.
I guess we have to open a public hearing. Motion to open the hearing for Eversource for a grant of new pole location east in Glenwood Streets. Do we know?
Thanks, David. I'll second that.
Thanks, Cindy.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Ian?
I think this is sort of a standard question that we ask whenever there's a new poll. Have any of the abutters or is anyone going to be impacted in terms of line of sight or on anyone's property?
No, not in this location, no.
Okay.
And the old pole is coming down?
No, that pole has to remain because it's still in line with the other distribution wires. And the purpose of the new pole going in is because we have to, where the wires are going down Glenwood Ave, they cross over the property that's being developed there, the residential commercial development, and it's going over their it's like an aerial trespass. So we have to take those wires and move them to the new pole location to maintain that feed down Glenwood Ave.
So are they crossing over the entrance of the road?
No, they're crossing over the private property where the development is.
Yeah.
And what's remaining on the old pole?
The remaining, what's remaining on the old pole is the distribution wires that go all along the street, down along the street.
Along East Street.
East Street, I'm sorry, yeah.
So I think this is to feed the
Just to feed
condos
into the
up,
condos.
up the street. And I think the poles used to be on the other side of the street. Now they're gonna be too close to the building, right? Is that what?
No, that hasn't come up yet. That's
Okay.
supposedly in the future. They are going to relocate those poles on Glenwood Ave to the opposite side of the street. But in order to maintain the current feed and the future feed down to Glenwood Ave, we need to move those wires over to another pole because right now they're crossing over private property.
Okay.
They can't gain access to the property to do construction in addition to the fact that it is an aerial trespass.
Any other questions? Do we have anybody from the public who would like to comment? Please come up to the microphone, sir. Please introduce yourself and give us your address.
Sure. Yes, my name is Bob Rockwood, and I own the building, the mixed-use building that's on the corner of Glenwood and East Street. And the two questions that I have, if this pole is put in and then the wires will diagonally cross over Glenwood Avenue to that new pole, it would go right through a tree that's approximately 10 feet taller than the telephone poles and, you know, quite mature. Does Eversource have any, explanation as to how that would be done?
Well, I could find out, but we normally would do some tree trimming in order to get the wires to go through here.
It looks to me like the wires would need to go almost, directly through the center of that. And it would be interesting, I would like to know, I'd be interested to know if that tree could be saved, or is that gonna have to come down in order to complete the transaction, in order to complete the wires going that way. And the other thing, if I just heard you say that eventually the poles will be moved to the, to my side of Glenwood Avenue?
That's what I've been told, but I don't know if that's actually gonna happen. I mean, but that's what I've been told. It's been brought up.
Jerry LaRusso, it's his project.
Sure.
My name's Jerry LaRusso. I'm with Edgewood Development. We've been working with the engineers at Eversource. We don't know where the wires are going at this point. And I've told Mr. Rockwood that any trees that get disturbed, if he wants, we'll replace them. I mean, we probably can't replace what are those, 40 feet? A 40-foot tree, but we would replace it with a 4 to 6 inch caliper, which is probably as big as you can plant and have any luck of it surviving. So at this point, we're still kind of in flux with how we're gonna get power down the street. We are trying to get it underground, as we had originally represented to the planning board, and they had asked us to try to do it underground, which is really the way everything else in the center of town is.
Right, so that was gonna be my next question. So what's stopping underground?
We've been dealing with Eversource for 8 months or a year. It's really just an engineering exercise.
By who? So what's preventing it from going underground?
I think they just have to find a way through all of the existing utilities that are in the street.
So then is this a temporary pole?
I don't believe it is.
David?
So, but the location of this new pole, is it accurate that the wires are going over your property currently?
That's correct.
Okay, and where do they go? Like, up Glenwood or?
Yes, they go up Glenwood, and actually, there's 1 or 2 poles on our property, and they have to address those too.
And do those electric wires serve the beginning of West Street, or do they serve your property?
I think they serve the condo project, and actually, I think 3-phase runs up from East Street, but I'm not the engineer.
Okay.
Ian?
But you need this pole to be moved for your project to
That's
get.
correct.
Please?
So my concern is, hearing from Mr. Rockwood, is that this pole, because of the wires, will have an impact on someone's private property. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes.
And Maggie, can you weigh in on that? I mean, what would we normally do? Because it's one thing to have wires running over someone's property with nothing in the way, I guess maybe an eyesore. But when we're presented with a pole where wires are going over someone's property regardless, is there a standard where the property owner has to say, yes, it's fine, or, I'm concerned about that.
So I actually think it's not, the issue is, this pole itself is the issue, it's what's gonna happen next with the wires on Glenwood, right? That's gonna affect the tree.
All of the above, as far as and I greatly appreciate that Mr. LaRusso has, has said here as well as other times that, he'll, try to make good on whatever the, damage to the trees are. And so the first question became, with this pole going through this very, this street, if the other 3, 4, 5 poles are moved to my side of Glenwood, there are trees that are on our property. At the moment, our property goes right up to the curbing, between the asphalt and the curbing. The sidewalk is on our property at this point. And I'm concerned if the wires came over, if the poles came over onto our side, and they have to trim the trees within 5 years. I'm not an arborist, but if all of those limbs are cut, then there's, there could be some problems. At the same time, I understand Mr. LaRusso's dilemma in terms of trying to get things underground, and just wanted to bring that up at this time.
See, I always thought it was going underground too, from the beginning. I do remember this issue because I felt like the poles were gonna be the wires were gonna be too close to the units if the wires stayed up on that other side of Glenwood.
That's correct.
And so I thought I remember even in the presentation that was done here that it was going underground, and presentations that we've had in regards to getting service over to West Street, I think that issue came up as well, because now they're rerouting that service because it used to be from the back of the building. So at this point, I think either way, they need this pole at this location, whether it's gonna go underground or to get you through your project, right?
That's correct.
I think the issue will be more at the next phase if they when they come to move the poles to the other side of the street, I don't want to let them move it to the other side of the street and make them go underground. And, I think that's really, I think it's the next thing, if we can encourage them to go underground at that point, that's really going to affect the tree.
Let me go to Jim next, and then Nancy.
So Jerry, question for you. So the original design, did it call for the wires to go underground?
It really called for us to work with Eversource. I mean, they're the ones that have to determine how they get them underground. I mean, it's not something we can do. We can just work with them, but it's certainly, I think, in everyone's interest to have them go underground.
Well, it sounds like it's the way we typically do it in the downtown area too. So I guess, and I don't really know, but I'm going to ask anyway, what can we do as a board to bring Eversource into the conversation so that we can get this resolved by putting the wires underground?
Maggie?
There's a second issue that kind of dovetails into the issue of it going underground. When they put the wires underground down Glenwood, they still also have to have probably at least 2 poles, because we have to have municipal streetlights. So even though the wires are underground, we still have to have 2 poles, like one in the middle, roughly one at the top, which we have, I think, at the center of town, up by the bank. We need one down in the corner, and then probably, I think there are more than one now, but we could probably get away with one in the middle and one at the end. So even if they put everything underground, we still have to make arrangements for poles somewhere.
But there wouldn't be
But they
wires.
could be decorative.
Correct.
Yeah, and they could be
Correct.
lantern
They-
poles.
Well, if Eversource can come up with or give us poles that, while being decorative and not the standard Cobra heads that we put in subdivisions, that they shed the right amount of light. So at some point, there's got to be some kind of pole there, and I think that's what I think, that, just to throw another kink in it, that's what they've got to work out.
So I get that, but there wouldn't be wires running to the pole.
No, it's just
which
to
is
find
what-
a- yeah,
what
exactly.
the
So that would-
problem
that would
Bob Rockwood is bringing up, is
Exactly.
the wires running to the
Yeah.
pole. So those wires would come underground and go up the pole, right? So then it would just be a question of, can you figure out where to put the pole without disturbing the trees, right? So it seems like that should be something we should work through, but it feels like, based on the dialogue I'm hearing, that you're having trouble getting Eversource to focus on this and work out a design. Am I hearing that right?
That's correct.
And
So what can we do as a board to help break that logjam?
I mean, it's something that we missed on South Street with the police station and the fire station. We've got a whole bunch of
jumbled up poles heading down that road. And, you know, we missed the boat. Like, they should have been underground while we were doing that project. And then at the end, when you came in to move some poles around, it's like, wait a minute, why aren't they underground?
So, but
Yeah,
that's
so
a,
what-
that's
how-
a
Can we
different,
require
No.
Eversource to come, I mean, I know we
Right,
have a
so
rep
how
from
do we
Eversource
make sure
now.
we don't do this mistake again?
yeah, and we've got a representative from Eversource right here. What,
Answers.
how can we work this out so that we get Eversource to focus on the question that Jerry LaRusso is asking and solve all these problems?
We can go back to engineering. I'm not too familiar with the project of going underground in Glenwood. I just have heard of it, but I don't know too much about it. It's all with engineering at this point. So I can go back to engineering and maybe we could set up a meeting or.
I mean,
And I would just say that the board is in favor of it being underground and would like to
Yeah.
provide our support behind that idea and
Right.
You're
encourage
talking about the Glenwood Ave
Glenwood Avenue.
piece of it, okay.
Not this one pole you're asking for right now, but getting the power moved underground, as we've just been discussing, so.
Agreed. I
So
think
to,
the
so to
poll has,
consider more of an underground installation as opposed to relocating poles to the opposite side of the street.
That's
Right.
it.
Yes,
That's correct.
exactly.
And that's, perhaps we can make this pole installation a temporary. Can we give it a 6-month or 9-month run and then make them come back to get this pole approved? Somehow to hold them to the fire on,
Let me go to Ann real quick and then.
I am concerned about this pole because of the wires and because of Mr. Rockwood's concern that it will be going through a tree on his property. Just this pole alone, right, with the wires? Am I understanding it correctly? Am I understanding?
right, but if we
That
don't
would-
move, if we don't grant this pole, then Mr. LaRusso can't continue with his project. So he needs the pole now for his
So
project.
this is an
but I-
immediate
I-
need?
but just to be clear, I thought that this pole locating this pole, that's not where the wires come in. The wires come in if we don't go underground. Do I have that right, Bob?
That would be my understanding,
Yeah.
but I would also.
So there's no wires going through a tree for
No,
this
because
pole?
what this is gonna put the pole in and then run the wires through the tree, okay, across the street?
This is gonna crisscross the street to the other side where there's a
Right.
current pole on Glenwood, which won't affect the tree right now, right? It'll only affect the
Mr.
tree
Rockwood said it would affect
when
the
they
tree.
move the poles to the other side of Glenwood, the tree will be affected.
My understanding is there may be some trimming of the limbs that are within the town right-of-way, but we're not running, or they wouldn't be running the lines on private property.
So if I could refer you to the diagram where we show the pole being located. Can you talk about how the wires are gonna attach that pole and where they're gonna run? Can anybody?
If you were to stand out across the street over near Gilmore's and
Yep.
look,
Yep.
sight from the proposed pole to the first pole coming back up Glenwood, this tree is right in the middle. You know, the wires would need to go through that tree and therefore substantial trimming. It doesn't show on the diagram.
Mark, just wait. I've already reached out to my 2 contacts that we dealt with for the police and fire stations and our local representative for Eversource to get them to move on this. I've asked for Maggie, myself, Jerry to sit in
Okay,
and set up a meeting on this thing. What I'm understanding from the board, you guys want to see underground utilities there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We want to try
Absolutely, yes.
everything in our efforts to make it happen.
You know, much appreciate
For the immediate,
the thought of going
to
underground.
minimally impact Mr. Rockwood's tree.
You know, the push to go underground.
What's your
Because
understanding?
especially there's not a lot of trees down there.
Just drew this line
what?
here.
There's not a lot
He
of
said
trees
that's the
down
wire
there.
he's worried about, as it
Which
crosses.
would be going up now.
Right, so if
Right,
this
and
goes,
trees.
no, so if this
So
all
I have
goes
a question, so
underground, that
do you
problem
need
goes
this
away.
approved right now?
Does he need it
If it's
approved
not
right now to
approved
run
right now,
now?
does it
For that
hinder your working on your site?
That's my concern.
Okay.
The immediate.
They have to move the lines where they cross our property so that it'll becomes a safety issue working within so many feet of the lines.
Of the lines. And Mr. Rockwood, if you know, our intention is to, as you can hear, try to get everything underground. If they put this, if they move these wires over to be doing the work now, and it does ruin the tree for now, would you be okay with it later being replaced when we took these poles down and went underground?
I would greatly appreciate, you know, even to the point of sacrificing this tree in order to save the other 3 or 4, 5 trees that are, you know, further up Glenwood. So yes, you know, one of my other concerns is that you know, the other 4 or 5 trees, you know, provide us, you know, some blockage from, you know, the other building that's going on, and you know, those are, I think, more critical than this one, which looks out toward the street. This one tree is not as critical. I would be greatly in favor of allowing Mr. LaRusso to put in this proposed pole, even at the expense of some limbs on the tree, or, you know, hopefully not worse, but at the very least, you know, allow that pole to go through so that the work could continue.
So how about we allow this pole, we work on underground utilities, and if during this process, this tree does become damaged, and then in the end, it's an empty space, Mr. LaRusso, you'll replace it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
And just one other comment, I also think that, I don't know the exact angles here, but if you trim the little edge of a tree, it's probably more likely to survive. If the wires have to go through the middle, you get that imbalance of the tree where you're gonna lose it eventually. So I'm not sure that this pole is gonna be as bad of an impact for now on that tree. Hopefully it's not. I think if you put poles on the other side, then you really have impacted that tree. And that's something that we don't wanna do.
I appreciate the board's, you know, idea of, you know, of eventually having things underground, and this pole, you know, could stay, and this would not be, you know, a real problem for us.
Okay. Ian, did you have one more comment?
Just one more comment. I'm pleased that the board came up with a compromise solution, but I am disappointed that but for Mr. Rockwood coming before us tonight, we would not have any idea of the wires. We would not have any idea that the poles were going to come in. There seems to be a disconnect in communication, and to get something like this at the last minute, or that those poles are, that Mr. LaRusso's having problems with Eversource, that happily there was a solution found, but for Mr. Rockwood coming forward, I don't think we would have, and we could have blithely voted for this without any thinking, and the consequences could have been bad for the property owner.
Jim?
So just on that point, are there any other things like this that you're aware of, Jerry, that we should know about?
No, we've been working with Eversource for about a year.
Yeah.
It's a process.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I think going forward, I'd like to see street view pictures with these drawings in our packets. Would be nice, like color street view pictures.
Great.
Can I make a motion to close the
Sure.
hearing?
Yep. I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
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 I'll make a motion to approve the request of Eversource to install a new pole on East Street, the southeasterly corner of Glenwood Ave, and include our discussion.
So could I put a little finer point on that?
Yep.
So with the understanding that Eversource will work with the developer to determine a way to put the wires underground? You good with that?
For Glenwood
I'd say the
Ave.
developer and the town, so.
Developer and the town,
We
okay.
need to be involved in that. too.
Okay. Yeah, I don't wanna leave it just sort of open.
Yep.
How about you say that they come back to you, either your last meeting in October, first meeting in November, with an updated report? Do you think you'll be able to get a report by then?
No.
Thank you for your honesty.
I have no idea what's going on with this undergrounding proposal. I don't even know where it stands with Eversource. So, I mean, I'm here before you tonight just to get this pole installed in order to get the aerial trespass off of his property so that it should be off, or shouldn't be going on his property to begin
Understood,
with,
yeah.
yeah.
But
So
can you get
that's
us,
what- I'm not familiar with any of the details of what they've worked on together, Mr. LaRusso and.
Could you ask Eversource if they could reach out to Jim Johnson to have a discussion about the undergrounding of those cables on Glenwood Ave? That's all you have to do is
Yeah.
just ask them. Tony?
That's what I'll do. I'll just relay this
I mean, Jerry.
information, but I don't want you to think
I-
that I'm saying, okay, we're gonna consider putting
I'm,
everything
I'm,
underground.
I'm just asking you to ask them to reach out to us.
Okay.
Jerry?
If we were trying to try to have a meeting between the town, ourselves, and Eversource, who would represent the town, Jim?
Jim would be the
Myself
one to help
and
get that
Maggie
set
would
up.
be there, yeah,
Okay.
two of us.
That'd be great. Okay.
So at this point, if this is approved and this new pole is installed, it will alleviate the problem that he's having as far as being able to do construction, and we'll get the aerial trespass eliminated.
Yes.
And then we'll
Yes.
still maintain the overhead feed up Glenwood Ave.
Yes, right now, yep. That's what we're saying. So we have a motion and a second. Any final discussion?
So are we tying, are we just gonna vote that it's okay for the pole to be moved or put in without more directly tying the underground wires into this conversation?
Well, that's why I added the minutes to my motion, to the motion, just so they're there as reference. I mean, otherwise, we either grant the poll, they either dig the hole and they
Right.
put it in, or they don't.
Right.
So I don't know that we can say we're gonna have you dig it up.
So maybe what we could do is, if I could propose something, maybe we deal with that business as standalone. But then we as a board vote to send a letter to Eversource asking that they come before us and help us work this out.
That would make sense.
Does that solve it?
So it's two separate.
Two
Yes.
separate
Yep.
things, yeah.
Making it
Yeah.
clean
What-
for
what I'm
Jerry
looking for
for this
tonight.
poll.
Yeah.
But then we do want to have a discussion about undergrounding. So-
Right, so we made the motion, I did add the minutes, which means if you could just bring this back to them and let them know this is how it went. And then we'll make a motion to send a letter.
Can we
So
just
on the first
send a
part.
request? So I've already typed it out, so instead of going.
Fair enough, yeah.
So on the request that we had an amended motion. Do we have a second on the amended motion?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Do we want to take a vote on the letter, or do you want to just go with that, Jim, since it sounds like you've already typed it up?
Sounds like we're
I'll make a
While we were
motion
talking.
to sign and support the motion, the letter to Eversource.
I'll second that. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rockwood, as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you as the board. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
and come see us if it's not working.
How soon would the minutes be available?
The what?
Minutes, how soon would
Oh,
they
the
be
minutes.
available for?
You are quick.
No pressure, I would rather have that in front of me before I.
Only doing two jobs right now, so things are kind of slowing down.
We can,
That's true.
we'll send you the videotape of tonight's
Yeah.
meeting.
It's online,
Walpole meeting.
that they could watch the meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
So you could do just
can
cut
actually see
and
what
attach a video clip.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
They call me next
Come on up. You here for something specific, or open meeting, or?
No, while you had Eversource, it just occurred to me, we have.
So let's say that we're opening up open meeting right now. Open forum. Okay, go.
I'm Bill Abbott, 694 West Street. Since you had Eversource here, you have lots of poles that get damaged and never seem to, they put up a second pole. Does anyone keep track of these? And when Eversource is asking for permission to put a new pole or, do something, do we say, and by the way, we got a list of, 32 poles that have, been damaged?
I'm gonna let Jim give you an answer, and I think one of the things I know is that sometimes when a pole gets damaged and they put a new one up, we as a town have something on that pole, like fiber. So
Or a
sometimes
fire
it's on
alarm.
us,
Or a
or
fire
fire
alarm.
alarm, where we need to then do something before. But the general question of, some poles do seem to stay for a long time, and
Even if it is us who's holding up the process, do we ever prioritize that? I mean, I just, on my way here, said, Jesus, there's two poles on my little section of the street that have been there for a long, long time.
Jim, you want to take a
We're
crack
having a
at that?
forest
No,
of
we
poles.
keep a running, usually get a lot of complaints about street lights that are out. We keep a running list, and police department, during usually the midnight shift, if they have nothing to do, they keep a log of here's where we're at, and they'll send it in once a month or so to Eversource. I think the representative from Eversource was really diplomatic today. They're really tough to deal with. They're not easy at all. We had a lot of problems with the fire station and getting that one single pole moved in front of the fire station. It took us multiple times to go down there and ask, even though they're right in town. It got to the point with one of these situations where I told everyone in town, Eversource does no more work, no more permits here till we get this issue. That got their attention. Generally, our local representative, Jack Lopes, is pretty good about responding to me. I just added double poles, outstanding status, where you're at, what's the list. Maybe when we get them in here, we can ask them about that, the status of some of the streetlights that are out, and this LaRusso Glenwood Ave issue here. But they're tough to deal with.
So just to take it back to the discussion we had just a few minutes ago, I think that maybe it does make sense for us to, as a board, state no more Eversource permits until we hear back from them on the undergrounding of Greenwood Ave.
I'll make a motion for that.
I'll second it. Any
Just
further
one
discussion, Jim?
question, is that gonna create any problem?
It
for-
does not create problems for safety.
Okay.
If they had like someone hits a pole,
Yeah.
they get to do that
Fair
anyway.
enough, okay.
I think that'll get their attention.
With
Okay.
that, yes.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any
No.
abstain? No or abstain?
No.
Okay, so 4-1.
I would like, on a similar, if, to new, what about Columbia Gas? Should we be talking about that in town and what permits they should be allowed to use, do?
Can we come back to that? Just because
Yes. Yep.
I started open forum. Is there anybody
Yep.
else here for open forum? Come on up. Please introduce yourself for the
Sure.
vast TV audience.
Susan Lawson, on RTM for Precinct 2. I'm also a member of Finance Committee. I'm here tonight to ask a number of questions in an effort to clarify the rights of the residents of Walpole to voice opinions, to vote, and to hold elected and appointed positions in the town of Walpole. So assuming a resident is a citizen of the United States and is at least 18 years of age, I would like to hear answers to the following questions from the board. First, must a resident of Walpole pay real estate taxes in order to voice an opinion regarding matters at issue in the town? I'll direct it to the chairman.
So one of our problems is when things come up in open forum, we actually can't really respond to them.
Okay,
We can put them on a future agenda,
great.
but
So
we're not really allowed to have a discussion because it's not on the agenda.
I'll run through the questions
Okay.
then. The second question I have is, must a resident of Walpole pay real estate taxes in order to vote in town elections? And third, must a resident of Walpole pay real estate taxes in order to hold either an appointed or an elected position in the town of Walpole? And finally, must a duly elected or appointed member of a board or committee or an elected RTM pay real estate taxes in order to participate in debate, to make a motion, or to vote as part of that body? Now, understanding you're not going to answer these questions, I'll just continue and I'll add this to the list. So one example I have is if a resident lives with his or her parents and is not paying real estate taxes, may that individual nevertheless voice an opinion, vote in town elections, hold an appointed or elected position, and fully participate as a member of a board or committee or as a member of town meeting in the town of Walpole? I'll wait for these answers if I must. Next is a resident who lives in public housing and thus is not paying real estate taxes, nevertheless able to voice an opinion, vote in town elections, hold an appointed or elected position, and fully participate as a member of a board or committee or a member of town meeting in the town of Walpole. Next question. A resident who lives in a home that is tax exempt based on the fact that the structure in question is owned by a church, and thus the individual is not paying real estate taxes, may that individual nevertheless voice an opinion, vote in town elections, hold an appointed or elected position, and fully participate as a member of a board or committee or as a member of town meeting in the town of Walpole. And finally, if a resident claims a partial tax exemption based on age, blindness, or veteran status, and thus is not paying 100% of his or her real estate taxes, may that individual nevertheless voice an opinion, vote in town elections, hold an appointed or elected position, and fully participate as a member of a board or committee or town meeting member in the town of Walpole. Before I move on to the next thing I'd like to say here, I'm an individual who does claim my husband is a disabled veteran, and we have a partial tax exemption on our real estate taxes, and I hope the answer is not going to be that I can only voice part of my opinion or give a partial vote.
So can I interrupt just, so when you're done with your list, could you give that to Cindy? Just because she's otherwise has to watch the tape and record it.
Absolutely.
And second of all, can I ask you to finish up in a minute? Because usually we give people
I'm almost
3-ish
done.
minutes. Okay,
I'm almost
thank
done.
you.
I'm asking for these clarifications and reassurances from the Board of Selectmen because some people in town, including one of the members of this board, are communicating a message that would seem to indicate that certain people in town, residents in town, are disenfranchised by virtue of the fact that they don't pay real estate taxes. I'm concerned that there may be residents of Walpole who may not fully appreciate the constitutional protections afforded by the First Amendment and who may be confused by messages being disseminated through social media and by other means. The First Amendment calls for separation of church and state. It is for this reason that the town may not tax properties owned by churches or other religious institutions. If an individual is not paying real estate taxes on this basis, he or she should not be disparaged for expressing an opinion or for voting in any particular way on any given issue, nor should such an individual be discouraged from participating fully as a member of a board, committee, or as an elected member of town meeting. The First Amendment also provides citizens of this country with the right to speak freely and publicly, with very narrow exceptions, the most famous one being shouting fire in a crowded movie theater. This right of free speech is not tied in any way to the payment of real estate taxes, period. It's bad enough when members of the general public attempt to shut down debate and discourse.
Could you finish up?
I'm almost done.
Okay.
However, it is particularly troubling when a government official attempts to do so. Members of the Board of Selectmen and those in other leadership positions in town have a duty to ensure to the maximum extent feasible that debate over public issues is based on facts and reason, not on misinformation and innuendo. I view the tactics that are being used by some as a form of coercion and bullying.
I think there's a time limit that's...
I would like to just finish 3 sentences. I recognize we may never be able to prevent some people from using improper methods to sway public opinion. However, the Board of Selectmen should go on record as being opposed to any attempt to imply that some residents are not free to engage in debate, to voice their opinions, to vote, to hold public office, or to participate fully. If there is confusion or a lack of consensus within the Board of Selectmen about this issue, I would urge the board to seek an opinion from town council well in advance of town meeting. I thank you for the opportunity to speak and for your attention to this very important matter. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to encourage the board not to respond if they can, and we can put this on as an agenda item next time to discuss if we want.
I will submit the questions.
If you can give that to Cindy, that will save her.
And I'll also submit the correspondence that raised
Sure.
the issue.
Okay.
I would like to respond sort of just with a, not for deliberation, but I'm assuming that Ms. Lawson's concern is with my providing information to the Walpole taxpayers about Mr. Flowers, who does not pay real estate taxes in Walpole because he neither owns a home in Walpole nor does his landlord pay taxes. And he's in a position on the Finance Committee and as an RTM where if I'm listening to Ms. Lawson's concern, by my providing information to the Walpole taxpayers of his tax status of not paying real estate taxes, conflicting with his position and sway and recommendations on the FinCom and his position of power. And while it may not, I don't think it has anything to do with the First Amendment, and I'm not going to debate it right now. But I don't think that providing information to Walpole taxpayers about individuals who are making recommendations as far as the taxes that Walpole taxpayers have to pay, the amount of taxes that they have to pay when they don't feel any of the impact of their decisions and recommendations. But it seems like your concern is the providing of information to Walpole taxpayers. And I guess that's something we can take up at our next board meeting.
Yeah, and I just, any implication that the board or anybody on the board has restricted anybody's free speech is, I don't think that's an issue here. This, and if anything, if this board did anything in the response to this, it would be it would result in impeding the free speech of Selectwoman Rogosta. So I think at this point, you know, it's a political discussion that they're having, that they're free to have in the open forum. That's what, you know, politics is about. It's, Mr. Flowers will continue to vote at Finance Committee as long as he's appointed by the moderator, which he was, and he will continue to serve as an RTM as long as he's been voted by the moderator. There's nothing that this board or anybody on this board has done.
By the
or
public.
By the public, I'm sorry. But there's nothing that anybody on this board or the town has done to restrict those duly elected positions. And I resent the implication that we need to act to do something to protect him. There's a public forum, the public debate. You've had your more than 5 minutes of time to make that argument. And, as the chairman mentioned, to the vast listening audience. And so that's that. I don't see any reason to discuss it any further.
I would simply ask you to seek.
Hold on. I'm surprised anyone on our side responded at all. So I will give you 1 minute.
Okay.
And then we're going to stop, and if we need to, we'll take this up as an agenda item.
Of the correspondence that raised the concern on my part, I would just ask you to seek advice of town council. It's one thing for a non-official to make a comment or engage in this kind of, I would call pressure, but when you are a government official, there is a different kind of concern in terms of shutting down the right of free speech. So I'm going to provide this information,
Okay.
and I just ask you to seek advice of counsel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, when will we debate this?
We can put it on the agenda next time. It's just, technically, we're not allowed to discuss it without it being on the agenda. So if you'd like to see it on the agenda, we can add it on the 9th of October, I guess is our
I'm
next meeting.
uncomfortable with the nature of the questioning and some of the things I'm hearing here, and I think it needs to be talked about.
Okay.
Okay.
Cindy, could you add that to our agenda at our next meeting?
On the 9th?
Which I think is the 9th. Okay. Next, we have Natalia Orlando seeking associate membership to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Were we expecting her?
She was coming
Did we hold off on that? Because usually, this is a new appointment, right?
Yeah.
but her appointment was at 8:10.
Was she here, do we know?
No.
She didn't show up.
So what's the pleasure of the board? Do you want to go ahead with the appointment? Do
I
you want
would
to hold
rather
it for
wait.
another meeting? Typically, we like to hear from a new candidate.
She may have changed her mind.
Okay.
Yeah, right,
Why
and then
don't-
we
Why don't we
appoint
do that?
her.
Why don't we just hold that? See if we can get that.
Yeah, I'll try to reach out to her tomorrow to find out what happened.
Mark, same thing with Jack Wiley. I looked around the building, he wasn't here. I reached out to Landis, so we'll put it off.
We'll
to
just
another
ask
meeting.
Jack to come back next meeting. And I think the whole idea on fees is, we've had some discussions over the last year on fees, and I think we'd like to know what they're doing in fees for Adams Farm. We probably want to then talk a little bit about Jarvis Farm and if we're doing things there. And, if we have a council on aging building coming online, at the end of the year, and there'll be opportunities there to have events and activities. So probably want to move towards seeing what we're doing. I'm only speaking for myself. And then see if we can standardize some of our practices across all of the different locations. There could be events. Same is true with schools. Schools are rented all the time for all different activities, and be good to kind of get ourselves in sync if we can. So if anybody else has a comment, feel free to jump in, but
I do have
Nancy.
a comment based on that. Maybe somebody like Patrick could make a spreadsheet for us of the different buildings and open spaces and their rents. You know what I mean? Like what we charge.
Yeah, we can do that.
The
It's not-
schools are the
it's-
thing that's
It's not more or
rented
less our
most often,
offices, yeah,
yeah.
it's
Huh?
schools.
Schools are rented every day.
But it would it would be, I
No,
think,
no,
in a
just-
spreadsheet
it'll
to
give you an
see-
idea of
Right,
what the
what our
money and-
schools are going for, what our open spaces, what our Blackburn Hall, and then who's also in charge of those ones. Like, I mean, they all ultimately come to us or whatever, who they go to, but maybe a path of how they go.
Okay.
And on that issue, I think, I'm not sure if, I thought I remember in one of the discussions about Adams Farm that they made some comparisons to other places and wondered if we could get, if someone has already done that.
Right.
If we could get that data too.
They did when they first.
Yeah, I think they
Right.
compared themselves to other venues
Right.
that were similar.
Similar to
Nice
them.
to see
Which
that.
would be helpful,
To
which
see
is
that.
different than what
You
we're
did
talking
that.
about.
Oh, you did that.
Bill, come on up. Bill raised his hand, he may have.
I just wanted to add that the Sewer and Water Commission has had the same various thoughts of, should we be charging, what's others are charging? So
Yes.
anything you can do to make it sort of consistent would be appreciated.
Agreed, we would want you involved in that discussion as well as the schools.
But we'll get the little plan first.
Ian?
Just a quick question. Jim, I know Jack Wiley's not here to answer this, but do we know when the fees come in for Adams Farm? Do they come into the town? So are the checks payable to town of Walpole?
If somebody's renting, yes, the checks come to me. It's made out to, unfortunately not me, the town of Walpole.
That would be even better.
Yeah, to the town of
Sydney.
Walpole, and it goes into a gift, it goes into their gift account, which they can use to, do things at Adams Farm. Now, there's other things where people, like, a nonprofit organization, they don't pay a fee, but they typically donate money to the Friends of Adams Farm, and then they use those funds.
Yeah, see,
to
and I
do
think
stuff.
that was where we wanted to focus and talk about, because it's a taxpayer-owned property.
So it would be good to
that's
hear
something
from
to
Adams
Jack.
Farm
We
and
really
what they're
definitely need
doing.
to
It would
talk
be good
to
to then
Jack.
look at the broader picture and
Right.
maybe we get involved with some policies and
That's why I think we need
procedures,
Jack
so
here.
that would make sense. Okay,
Maybe we should get somebody from Friends to come in too, or?
Yeah, I think so. I just feel like we have so many questions that
Sure.
we're just.
yeah,
We could do that.
why don't you find a night when somebody from each, from the,
And then,
yeah.
You want me to jump first before we do the reaffirm to the poll withdrawal, just so we don't circle
Sure,
back?
let's do that.
820, hearing of Eversource to grant a new poll for one anchor guy on Short Street that has been withdrawn, so I'm gonna make a motion to accept the withdrawal.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Want to do the reaffirm the vote of the Vino Winery? Jim, do you want to talk
So,
about that first? or
well,
give us the-
Need to explain.
Okay,
that?
Cindy, thank you.
I was gonna say, can Cindy chime in?
Okay.
This was one of those technicalities with the ABCC, and we've gone back and forth with them, so.
There's a new commissioner at the ABCC, and so we advertised this particular public hearing like we normally do, but she wanted us to add on-premise license in the ad. So they told us what we needed to do was to re-advertise it, but don't officially hold a public hearing, and then have you vote to reaffirm your vote of July 17th. And I have to send them tomorrow the new LLA sheet and a copy of the ad.
Okay.
And that's it.
So there
Any
wasn't,
questions, or?
So
there
Nancy
wasn't-
and David weren't here.
I was just gonna say, I know I wasn't here, so I
Okay.
can't make the reaffirm vote.
but should we have a do we have to have another was it
No.
noticed for another public hearing now?
Yes, but we didn't get if you don't notify abutters or anything like that, that's what they told me to do.
Should we just open and
Trust me.
close a hearing?
Dealing with
No?
them is not easy.
I guess.
Oh, but that's what they said to do.
But they said, don't hold a hearing. They said, just advertise it.
Anybody here
Crazy,
to-
I know, but that's what I was told.
Should
I
we-
talked to them 3
So
times.
3 of us were here.
Yeah,
right?
so- One of you that made the motion or the second should make the vote of it. I mean, did you all vote in positive anyway?
Yes, they
Yes,
did.
yeah.
So,
So I come back on the public hearing.
Yes.
We advertise the public hearing,
Right.
but they don't have the public hearing.
No.
Did you have a
Exactly.
time? Did you have a
Exactly.
time?
I didn't know about
it. We should open and close up.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, I
no.
think so.
Did you have
I
a
think-
time for the public
Wouldn't hurt to
hearing
just
and the
open and close
There's
advertisement?
a time for the public hearing in the ad, but there's no notification to abutters. They said, don't notify abutters, you don't really have to hold a public hearing, just saying there's a public hearing. But if you wanna open it, you can do
Motion to
that.
open a public hearing.
Second.
Why don't I second that, just because you weren't here? So motion is second
CC for
to
you.
reopen a public hearing, to open a public hearing. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Abstains. Oh, yeah. Oh,
We're here for this
Fine.
one.
Yep,
okay.
okay, so now,
Is there anybody here who wants?
is there anybody who wants to speak at a public hearing about the Davino Winery? It's gonna be on Route 1. It's near where there's a landscaping shed. It's
Next to Sunshine
next to
Daycare.
Sunshine
Across from
Daycare.
the old driveway.
So they're gonna actually make wine, have
the
wine
Village Grummer.
tastings, and sell wine. It's kind of a nice little thing. So there's nobody here to talk at public hearing?
No,
Motion to
Al-
close the
Al
public
wanted to
hearing.
come, but he couldn't.
Okay, so we have a motion to close public hearing. Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion to reaffirm the vote that we took on July 17th.
I'll second that. Any discussion? No, now we can all vote, because we've
Yeah.
reopened it. So we have a motion, a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstain or?
Abstain.
Abstain, okay.
I do have one question.
Sure.
In that meeting, if I recall, there was somebody who was here, an abutter of some kind, who was concerned about, I think, some trash or something that was piled up nearby the building. And I think we said we were gonna have someone, I forget who it
David
was.
went out
Yeah.
and checked it out, and I believe the person was satisfied. I'll follow up with David,
Okay,
the building commissioner again.
perfect.
That's
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Let's see, how about we move to new business? Vote one day wine and malt license at Adams Farm for October 6, 2018.
I'll make
for
a motion.
cyclocross.
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day wine and malt at Adams Farm on October 6, 2018 for cyclocross.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. I'll make a motion for a one-day malt for November 3rd, 2018 at Blessed Sacrament
I'll
for
s-
a trivia night.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And
So Walpole Housing Partnership.
I gave you ballots right there. There's
So-
his name on it.
Here's the thing,
Or
we,
has their own.
5 people applied, we each get 2 votes. Cindy made up a ballot. It can't be a secret ballot, so if you want to check them off, Cindy can add them up. But the public has the right to know how we voted, which I don't think is a big deal. So
should we just go around and say our two?
Names
you
up.
can't, sure, you want to do it that way?
Do
We'll
whatever
just keep
you
track.
want.
Well, that way then we don't have to hold on to the paper for 50
That's
years.
fine, why don't you do that?
Well, I
That's my
mean,
paper.
Sure, I'll make, my 2 votes are for Benjamin Barrett and Elizabeth Barrows.
Okay, thank you. David, would you like to go next?
Benjamin Barrett and David Wilnauer.
Jim?
Benjamin Barrett and Elizabeth Barrows.
Ann?
Benjamin Barrett and Elizabeth Barrows.
So it really doesn't matter how I vote, but I will vote. I'll vote for Benjamin Barrett and David Weidenauer. So we have 5 votes for Benjamin Barrett, and we have 3 votes for Elizabeth Barrows. So they'll be our 2 appointees for the Affordable Housing Partnership Committee.
So I'll make a motion to appoint Benjamin Barrett to the Walpole Housing Partnership.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. I will make a motion to appoint Elizabeth Barrows to the Walpole Housing Partnership.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Look at that. Well, we don't have to save those pieces of paper for 50 years.
So just for the people at home watching on TV, that was
Recycle now.
a different process that we used. We interviewed the candidates, and then we waited till the next meeting. So it's something that we can do in the future if we choose, so. Sometimes we feel pressure to make a quick decision, and this sort of broke it into 2 parts, and I think worked out pretty well. Jim, vote discussion, Articles 1 through 20. How about if we do the other items first?
Sure.
And then my suggestion when we do Articles 1 through 20 is that we try to go quickly through them, and the articles where there's not gonna be a lot of discussion, try to vote through those, the articles we want to have discussion.
Put a hold
we
on.
Put a hold on them, and we'll do them on October 9th at our next meeting, and we can have appropriate people be here if appropriate. But Jim, why don't you do the authorized town administrator to move forward with an intermunicipal agreement? Why don't you give us a little update on that?
Okay, last week, last week at the Board of, or 2 weeks ago at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, I mentioned under the TA updates that we now have a plan that's before you right now, with 55% of the proposed hotel on the Walpole Sharon line, sometimes called the Applebee's Motel. 55% of it's in Walpole, 45 in Sharon. I had asked your board for basically authorization to have informal talks with Sharon, the town administrator over there. Your board authorized it, but also I believe Jim asked, maybe we should have this on as an agenda item to determine if we really want to go forward with this thing in general. I know Ann expressed some concerns. So I've had those informal talks. I've also had informal talks with our town council, the council representing David Waluka, the developer here. I think they're going in the right direction. We're at the point where tentatively the town administrator over in Sharon and I have talked about Walpole receiving a portion of Sharon's room tax and keeping our whole portion. He was receptive to us getting a portion of their, not the whole 100%, but a good chunk there. Other items that need to be addressed as part of the interlocal agreement is inspection logistics, zoning versus the planning board, because in Walpole, there will be need for a site plan, and Sharon, same thing, site plan, but planning board handles site plan for us, zoning board handles site plan for them, so we just need to, I want to work out the details of logistics there, who's the primary responders, and the peer reviews if necessary. So those are just a few that are kind of off the top of my head. So I really need to know, is this something the board wants to move forward with, and if so, can I get a vote?
Sure. Who's got questions or comments? Ann?
I do. At our last meeting, just to refresh everybody, my concern was for the water usage and how we are limiting our own residents to their water usage, and bringing a hotel on that uses a lot of water causes me an equity concern. But more importantly, we have just put 2 hotels online, the Home 2 Suites and the Fairfield Inn. And I did speak with the owner, Jax Patel, who expressed concern about this. And his concern, you know, he gave me the numbers, you know, he in the Fairfield Inn has sunk $14.5 million into that property. And a friend of the family, I guess, owns the Home 2 Suites, and they are in for about $17 million. He wanted to be here tonight, and he was not able to make it. He would like to either send a letter to the board or be able to be heard and explain how it takes 3 to 5 years to get established. They require like a 60% occupancy rate. And as I explained at the last meeting, my concern is that we encourage businesses to come to Walpole. This is a big investment for these people. And I think we should do what we can to see them succeed. I mean, especially the Marriott Hotel, they took a blighted property and took some time to really do what they, to make it worthwhile. I know that the Fairfield Jax Patel, that property, they pay about $81,000 in real estate taxes. I don't know what Home 2 Suites pays, but, you know, has EDC been involved in this, in sort of developing, and do we have a plan to see when we have these companies or these businesses coming into Walpole, what can we do to help them succeed? And I'm not saying that we should prevent all competition, because that's not what we're about, but to have a plan going forward, like, you know, I think it's complicated. I would like to hear from the owners of these hotels themselves, to the extent that it would, I don't know if it would sway the board, but at least get some insight as to how it would negatively impact them.
So I'm going to suggest we do this. Each of us have a chance to talk, and then I see Bill in the crowd, so I do have a couple of water questions, if you're willing. So I'll go to Jim. Jim, if you have any basic questions before we bring Bill up.
So I'm trying to separate your two concerns. One of which I think is some view that there's disequity in the way we allocate water between residents and commercial, and specifically for this development.
No, I think because we tell, you know, in the summer, we're limited, we limit
Yeah.
ourselves to the water
Yeah.
because of water usage, and then bringing on a hotel, which is a huge water user, we're still telling ourselves, we're water and sewer, we get them at the summertime notices every year, reduce your water usage. So I'm just not sure why we're dead set. I mean, we're not probably dead set, but moving forward with although it's 55% Walpole, it's still 45% Sharon. But that's, it's an issue, but it's not.
I guess, and maybe Bill, you'll be able to answer this, but I guess I'd like to know some more about how much water utilization, all that, and is there a valid concern there or not?
Bill, you willing to come up? We're sort of running down this path. We might as well keep going. So Bill Abbott, sewer and water, so.
Bill Abbott, sewer and water. We did have some discussion on this. Initially, as you're probably aware, they wanted to build the entire building in Sharon, and that was definitely, we were not interested in doing that. And then when it was a 50-50, we also indicated that, yeah, but the key thing is having access to water and sewer. We should get more, and Jim agreed to go and attempt to negotiate, in which he's done. I don't remember any discussion saying, okay, this is going to be a real problem of delivering water. Our real problem is summer usage of water. If you look at the 7 months of the year, January through April, October through December, we average around 2.2 million gallons a day. During the summer months, those 5 months, it shoots up and exceeds over, oftentimes over 3, and sometimes on a daily basis might go up to 4. So in terms of normal usage, you know, hotels, you know, we've got plenty of room. It really, the concern we have is dealing with summer usage where it's, you know, for irrigation, which generally, you know, it's homeowners who are doing that.
So, and I know you probably can't represent the Sewer and Water Commission here, but, or maybe you can, I don't know, but, so I'm trying to get a sense for, is there a valid concern here or not, in your mind?
That was one of the things that was brought up, and at the end, and Jim, you were there, the general consensus was we were okay with doing this, providing that we got more than 50% of the revenue from the hotel.
And in fact, it was a 3-1-1 vote to proceed forward with that.
And we have achieved that?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't see an issue there. Now, on the competitive front, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get involved with trying to give anybody competitive advantage over anybody else in the marketplace. I think the marketplace should do that by itself. And so I don't see that we should be holding anything up here because we've got 2 new hotels in town. I mean, I hear the point, don't get me wrong, but the market's the market. This hotel wouldn't have come in here if they didn't think there was adequate market share. And this is what keeps prices reasonable and, you know, keeps, you know, competition is good in my mind. So I don't see an issue with the competition. I guess the only other question that I think we had was there was some question about whether there was, and I think it's in here, I think there's a picture of a connector.
Yes, the hallway.
Between the and Applebee's, the hotel and Applebee's. And I can't remember what the issue was, but there was a concern over that connector the last time we talked. Do you recall what that was?
Well, there was a general concern because Applebee's has a non-compete clause for that particular parcel. So he can't really serve food there, maybe alcohol he can, but I think this was his workaround to work with them to keep their lease, because they have a long-term lease there. Just a connector, that's all I recall. In
So,
that part.
so to your knowledge, we don't have any issue with that connector?
No, that'll have to go through site plan and be vetted by
Yeah,
the
yeah,
planning
yeah,
board.
yeah.
He's aware of that.
Yeah. Those would be my questions, Mark.
Okay, let me go to Nancy.
What is the potential for a hotel revenue tax for Walpole?
You asked me give me a second. Ask your next question.
Okay. And then I just wanted to mention that you look at this site, and it's a buildable site, and a few years ago, like 7 years ago, we identified the Route 1 corridor as a place for business and the place that we wanted to grow our tax base, because we don't want to be necessarily growing it in the neighborhoods and things like that. But when we discourage things like this, the example is literally right down the road, a 40B that we have being built and that we spent a lot of money trying to fight and trying to put off, and it's there, and they're building it. And so what happens to this parcel when somebody wants to sell it and they don't get to put their hotel there that they want to do? They turn around and they can put a 40B there, because we don't meet our numbers, and it's done right down the street. There's another one on Route 1 also, up the street at the Preserve, down the street at, I forget what it's called, behind Walmart.
No, Moose Hill.
Moose Hill.
Yeah.
So right there are two examples on either end of Route 1, and now we're talking about the middle parcel. If we don't collect a hotel revenue tax, instead we can be looking for more teachers and more firefighters and more people that will, deal with the outcomes of a 40B. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. We've been asking and identified over many years that we want business on Route 1. That, I think that's where it goes.
Bill, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Just on line with Ann's comments, one of the things that we asked was, and it had nothing to do with water, was, do we need all these hotels? And now certainly it may be self-serving from the guy who was building it. He insisted multiple times that this area is under-hoteled, underserved for hotels. I just add that, like I say, I'm not sure that whether he was just a self-serving comment, and certainly I can understand why somebody who already built hotels wouldn't want a third one, but.
Let me go to David. David, did you have questions?
No, but I would comment that I think with the site and its problems, what its issue, the way it's squeezed in here, I think we physically probably couldn't get much more than 55% of it in Walpole. I think this plan did a pretty good job of getting as much, still having an attractive building and usable layout, and keeping as much of it on our land. I think that's, and the other comment is that if we're talking about, that's basically a comment. I think that's pretty good. I don't see another way to build this on this lot and make it make sense, and get much more than 55% of the building in Walpole.
Well, and Jim did enter some discussions with the town of Sharon. We will end up with more than 55% of the revenue, which I think is a good thing. Right. So in general on this site, I am in favor of commercial construction. I think this is a good use of that site, especially since it's right on Route 1, right at 95. And I do worry about what it could become if not this. So I'm pretty happy with this outcome. For those of you who may remember, this started out as being a hotel predominantly in Walpole 15 years ago. And then there was it's bounced back and forth several times. And in this iteration, I think this is a pretty good plan and probably the best they could do in terms of getting it into Walpole. So I'm in favor of that. Any other comments or want to make a motion?
Did he get his number?
Huh?
Did he get his number?
Yeah, I did $150 per night at 6%, so that's $9 per room per night. at 116 rooms, and they estimated on those other two Patel hotels, the one at Fairfield and Home to Suites at a 60% occupancy. So just really rough numbers, me throwing it together. So that's $626 a night at 60% occupancy, so $228 a year, so 1,000.
The other thing, you know, there was a time in my life when I traveled every week all over the country, and one of the things I noticed is the hotels that did well were the ones that were clustered near other hotels, just like the restaurants that do well tend to be clustered near other restaurants, because you're willing to go to the area knowing I can get a good hotel room, I can go to a good restaurant. So, you know, I think some of that could be in play. I see that in Norwood all the time when we need people coming into town who didn't stay with us but needed a place. You know, there's 7 or 8 hotels clustered together in Norwood, and people had their choice between brands and price levels, and, you know, that seems to be a pretty good situation there, so. Want to make a motion, Nancy?
Yes, I make a motion to authorize the town administrator to move forward on the intermunicipal agreement with Sharon for proposed hotel and update board on proposed site layouts.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
So just to follow up on, now that I have that authorization, we'll go forward. I'll present a draft to your board once it's ready for comments or anything. We may need to have a joint meeting with the Sharon Board of Selectmen in the future.
Yep.
Oh, how exciting. Another road show.
Yeah.
So I'm going to suggest, right now, we do the consent agenda. Then I'm going to suggest we go back to Articles 1 through 20 and vote all the articles that we don't need a lot of discussion on, because we do have to get to 3 items on executive session after that, so.
These items will, on the consent agenda will be voted as one item. These are acceptance of gifts, and they are from James Delaney and Sons Funeral Home to the Recreation Community Event Sponsorship in the amount of $1,000. Dedham Savings Recreation Community Event Sponsorship, $1,000. Walpole Cooperative Recreation Community Event Sponsorship, $3,500. Fidelity Charitable to the Council on Aging Building Gift Account, $2,000. And Kenneth and Ann Maffey for library materials in the amount of $100.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll just say thank you to everybody making donations. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are those fireworks funny?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 7th, 2018.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Only one set of minutes, right?
Yep.
Jim, can we go to the
Sure.
warrant?
Okay, I'll just start off with Article 2 here, is the in-year budget adjustments. As you may recall, back in February during my town administrator update or budget message to the town, I did insinuate that there would be added costs for these buildings here. We didn't build that into the budget at the time because we really didn't have any firm data to base that off of. Now that we've been in most of these buildings, well, for some time, we do have a small section of data to estimate. So working with the department head, project manager Compass, Don Anderson, myself, we came up with these estimates. Total in-year budget adjustment recommended by the Finance Committee is $224,300, and that would be funded through taxation and through new growth.
Any discussion?
I know we're not gonna talk about.
No, if it's quick,
but-
we should,
but quick,
yeah.
So,
If we want to go into a detailed, we can just push it till,
right.
you can hold it and push it.
No, this will be brief, it's a I think it's worthy of noting. This amount, this $250,000 for extra utilities, is this, will this be projected, is this the full year? In other words, or is this only for a partial year to finish out the rest of this fiscal year?
This
In other words,
in
what
addition
will be
to.
additional?
So what we have budgeted, so I'll give you an example. I know for a fact we currently have 20,000 budgeted in the fire department. So that 20,000 coupled with the 60,000 recommended here, 80,000 total for their electricity, will get them through the whole year.
So, in other words, you had budgeted the original budget for electricity for the fire department was 20,000, which would take them through the year.
That was based on the old building.
Correct.
Yes.
So the new building is using 4 times the amount of electricity,
3 times, but yeah.
3 times the amount of. Okay, so for the fire station going forward, we'll be looking at 3 times. So I think that's worthy of, not for this, because we're going to vote on it, but I wonder if taxpayers realized the huge extra expense. Because if we multiply this 225 by 3, will that be another $750,000 that will be required for utilities?
No.
What do
This
you,
would- So,
over,
this
over,
would,
over last year's, over the old buildings, what would you expect?
so I would anticipate, so it's a little tricky, because Council on Aging never had an electricity budget. It was always paid for out of town hall.
Okay.
So then went from nothing to 50. So I anticipate that it will be 224 versus, on top of whatever was budgeted in these 2 departments. Let's add another 100,000 on there to cover these altogether. But that will be broken out as part of their budget request in December.
Going forward, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Nancy?
I'll make a motion for favorable action on Article 2.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Against or abstain?
Oh, I'm sorry, aye.
Aye, okay.
I was looking
So
at the notes.
500.
Yep.
Okay, Article 3 is in regards to taking $150,000 from free cash and put it aside for the anticipated construction for the fields design. Over the last 10 years, town meeting has considered on multiple occasions the expansion of the town's field infrastructure facilities. In 2007, town meeting voted to conduct.
So before we go too far, is this one we want to talk about and push it?
I think we hold this one.
Let's push that till the next meeting.
Hold the next one.
Tell me hold next time.
Hold.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I didn't want to let you get too far.
Okay. School feasibility study,
Hold.
I would recommend we hold that, just Lincoln Lynch is coming.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Stabilization.
I actually want to hold that.
Yeah, it's too low.
Well, no, I think did we not appropriate 1.5 million in the spring?
Yes, you did.
So we've already appropriated 1.5 million in the spring. So I think it's worth,
We can hold it, sure.
let's hold it.
Okay. OPEB, any questions on that one? That would, we did appropriate some funds in the spring, 350,
Right, so what did we appropriate in the spring?
350,000.
And what do we appropriate, what do we want to
The
appropriate?
request here is for 216,120.71.
I think skip to number 10.
I don't need to hold OPEB, I was just, not that large of a number, although I'm curious how you came up with that.
David, can we move forward with this one, or you want to hold it?
Which one?
OPEB.
OPEB's fine.
I'll make a motion to approve Article 6.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against or abstain? So 500.
Okay.
10?
School articles, so hold everything, okay. What is-
School reimbursements, you don't want to do? Is that,
Article 7?
I have some questions about that. I'd like to have someone in on that.
The superintendent's coming in.
okay, sure, that's great. Capital infrastructure,
Hold.
okay.
I think number 10's our next one.
9, same thing, capital equipment, hold.
Hold, please.
And my only suggestion is if you have specific things you know you want to talk about, just let Jim know, so he's ready to go down that path. So, street paving, number 10.
This request here is taking $469 from free cash and $778,469 from Chapter 90. Finance Committee voted favorable action 13-0-0. If you scan to the back of your packet there, we have listed off the anticipated streets to be done with that, road paving, and the areas. Any questions?
I'd like to hold that, because we did that in the spring as well, right?
No, you did that last fall.
Oh, so we have not,
It's a new set of streets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, are we gonna not pave streets?
no, I just wanted to see what we had done in the spring, similar to the stabilization fund where we did.
So we did no paving whatsoever in this
So
paving
we didn't do,
appropriation.
there was no appropriation, no Chapter 90 funds.
No, we did it
Okay.
last fall.
Thanks, okay.
Make a motion for favorable action, Article 10.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Favorable action 500.
Okay, this is the paving borrowing. This is a program, I think this is about year 8 of this. It's a continuation. Maryland does a short-term borrowing to kind of bridge the gap between the shortfall and the the state's funding via Chapter 90. Again, $200,000 this year. We anticipate that we'll pave all of Clark Ave and South Street from, we've been holding off on South Street for the completion of these projects, so by then everything will be wrapped up.
So, go ahead.
So this is like we were talking about earlier. We expend the money and then we get a check from the state later, and this is just to bridge that time period?
This is to
The
do
last
additional.
one, this is to do additional. So this is a short-term borrowing. She usually borrows these ones for about 3 years. We don't get reimbursed for this.
Okay, so this is 3-year borrowing.
So what happened with this one is we didn't feel like we were catching up
Yeah.
with just the money we were allocated by the state.
We didn't
So this
feel like
was
we were
added-
keeping up, yeah.
This is maybe like the 10th year, I know you said,
I
but
think it
it
was
feels like it's been 10
like
years.
eight years. yeah.
So one of the things I've already mentioned to Jim is I thought this winter was pretty brutal and a lot of our roads took a beating. And even though they got a lot of work done, this is an area where maybe next year, I'd encourage you to really look at, maybe we need to, assuming, we have free cash, maybe we're gonna take a look at trying to do even more on roads, because it does feel like even though we're putting a lot of money in, we're still falling behind. So just a comment from me, doesn't.
So what you're saying is that the budgetary process for the last several years has been not putting enough money into roads, and that we keep having to borrow for it, but yet we still have $5 million in free cash.
No, that's
year to
not what
year.
I'm saying. No, what I'm saying is I think that sometimes we have a particularly rough winter, and it would be nice to try to catch up and get on top of those roads that, weren't anticipated to be, needed to be repaved or top-coated, and to try to catch up. So, no, I think our budgetary process is very good,
I agree, and I
actually,
think
right
the
now.
perfect way to do that is with free cash.
I'm not opposed to that discussion next year.
I'll
So, go ahead, yep.
I'll make a motion to favorable action, Article 11.
So we have a motion, I'll second that. We motion a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Abstain or
No. No.
So 4-1.
410.
Water pipe improvements.
Sure. This is, again, we started this program, this will be year 4 of this. The last couple of years, we've been borrowing, as some borrowing funds have freed up, fallen off the water department there. We've been trying to just keep up, just like we have with our paving infrastructure, our pipeline infrastructure. So this is a borrowing authorization to continue this program, to get out the new pipes. This is for a 1930 pipe on Baker Street. Yeah.
Quick question, I just have a quick question
Sure.
on this. The water and, all of the pipes and the water mains and everything, all those repairs, those are paid, regardless of whether we borrow or pay for them outright, they're paid through the water rates. So it has really nothing to do with our
When was Baker
taxation per
Street?
se, right?
No, it's just more or less it comes specifically from the water retained earnings fund. It
Right.
doesn't, but we do have to borrow for it on the town side, Marilyn,
Yeah,
myself.
no, I
yeah.
understand that, but it's repaid back with water
Yeah.
fees.
This is to redo the water pipes on Baker Street?
We're part of,
When?
Hopefully next spring.
Didn't we just pave Baker Street?
That's just a leveling course. That wasn't a full mill and overlay. That's just a leveling course to hold it together.
Okay,
Knew it
just
was
check,
coming
because there is like a nice, I mean, it looks nice. If it's not a full whatever, then it won't last another winter anyway, and it was really bad. Okay, just checking.
Any other questions? Nancy, you want to make a motion?
Make a motion, favorable action, Article 12.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
500.
Okay.
Underberry grant loan.
Sure. This is an article, we actually had to go back, I think 2002 or 2006. That's the last time we requested this authorization. This is just for sewer. It has nothing to do with the MWRA discussion we had back in the spring. This would authorize the town to participate in the I&I Local Financial Assistance Program, under which the grants, there would be a zero-interest grant secured by the Water and Sewer Commissioners and paid back through water and sewer rates, and it's more or less, did I miss much on that one?
75% of the grant we don't pay back. It's a grant, only 25% of the amount. And it's used for
Zero
I&I
interest.
to investigate, find where the leaks are, and also to correct the leaks in the sewer system. That's something we've done in the past. It's a real good deal for the
And it's a win-win. It
Yeah.
keeps us from, it prevents us from continuing to lose water out of the system, so I think that's a great thing.
Make a motion favorable action, Article 13.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
500.
Okay, Article 14 is a request from the police chief to accept Mass General Law 256, which would enable them to conduct the state and federal fingerprinting for items such as hawking and peddling, dealer for secondhand articles, pawn dealers, ice cream vendors. Just gives the police department the ability to do that and send it through the database. Finance Committee voted 15-0 on that one.
Make a motion.
I'd like some discussion on this.
Sure.
I think we should put a hold on this, because I'd like to hear from Chief Carmichael on this. I don't necessarily think that,
Let's put it on
that's
hold.
my pitch.
Yep.
Let's put it on hold.
Moving on.
Hold on 15, please.
15 hold. 16.
So
Street
15's
acceptance
on
at
hold,
Atlantic
right?
Court.
Yeah.
Well, we just-
a
Yeah.
note on 15, so the proposed language says one thing, and I highlighted that there. Finance Committee last week asked me to go back. They didn't like the way it was worded. They asked me to make a change there, so I went ahead and made that change. They waited to vote on it until this, yesterday, because I wanted to just check with council and make sure it was still in spirit with the way it was written. They were comfortable with it, so just let me know if you have any further questions.
If this is hold, we'll vote on
Yep,
this next
we're
week.
gonna push that
Okay.
till the next meeting.
The street acceptances?
Yep, Atlantic Court. What is your motion?
Do both of them together.
To hold them?
No, no, no.
Oh,
do 'em.
okay.
Sorry. No,
All right,
hold.
sorry. I'll make a motion favorable action, Article 16.
I'll second that for discussion. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
500.
I'll make a motion favorable action of support of Article 17.
I'll second that for discussion. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Tax rate reduction, push that till next.
Hold.
Jarvis Pond recreation purposes.
So I can explain this, and
Sure.
then you guys let me know if you want to hold on that one. So Finance Committee voted 11-0 to refer this recommendation to town meeting because they wanted some input from the sewer and water commissioners on this one. A resident came forward, asked to have summer swimming down there on the weekends and the holidays in the summer. Problem is, obviously, that one, there's added cost on there, and two, this summer, we closed the pond probably about half the time during Jarvis Farm because the E. coli levels were pretty high. This all came up during the discussion. I would estimate that the proposed cost for this would be up to $20,000. Brendan estimates he needs about $14,000 for lifeguards, and then I added on another $6,000 or so just for grounds and general pickup down there. So I would propose if it did go forward, again, this is only more of a recommendation. Town meeting can't direct a department what to do. They basically make the laws in the town and appropriate the funds. So it's more or less up to the sewer and water commissioners. But if it does go forward and gets voted in Finance Committee and if sewer and water commissioners want to pursue this, I'd recommend that it be funded via retained earnings through the water department. That way it's not impacting the recreation department negatively, because there is a desire to have some tags down there to do this, but we need some money to kind of start that up, set it aside.
And my other concern is that, I mean, I think it would be an awesome addition to, like, our summer life as a town, but it is a large piece of property and a new endeavor that we took on not that long ago, and this was the first year to use that, and we had it closed half of the time. And, you know, I think it's something we need to get a better grip on before we should be jumping into pond guarding on the weekends, and that's like free pond guarding and
Can I ask Bill
clean.
Abbott to come up, just because this land is under the control of sewer and water?
Yeah, the gentleman, Mr. Carroll, came before us and presented the idea, and I don't think that we didn't deny or approve the thing. There wasn't a whole lot of interest. There was a concern about, obviously, there'd be lifeguards, and our concern was the rec department, did they have budget? I suspected they didn't, since we're halfway through the year. And also, would they want to, have swimming on the weekends? It would be a recreation program. Obviously, the water department doesn't hire lifeguards and, deal with those activities.
And you don't want to.
Right.
And I do have a concern about using water retained earnings. I think you'd have a problem from a 2.5%, proposition 2.5%, in that now you'd be using water revenue for non-revenue water items, and this is the next. We're going to take ambulance fund for 8th grade textbooks and whatever. I think you'd run into a problem using water retained earnings for anything other than.
I understand your point of view that you can't. So, what you're saying is you can't hire lifeguards using water retained earnings. So it's a whole separate thing.
I haven't asked council for a ruling on that. So.
Can we put a hold on this? I think I'd like to hear from the petitioner, because I think since the ratepayers paid $4 million for this property, I would like to see it open to the public. So I think it's worth hearing from. So I think we'd like to see a hold on this. I think.
Are you asking if the petitioner has an idea in mind of how to raise the money to do this activity, or?
Well, I guess I'd like to hear from the petitioner to see if he has any ideas, but I'd like to explore further. I don't know if Bill can explain now. If the ratepayers are paying for the land, why would, we're kind of pickled, because it's sort of a hybrid, right? Where it's owned by water and sewer, but managed by rec department. So
well, the recreational use is managed by rec department.
Right.
The land in its ultimate use and priority use is water.
Right, so the recreational use is managed by the rec department. So the question, as we're discussing now, is who pays for the extra lifeguards? I think if it costs $20,000 and we somehow figure out a fee arrangement for tags particular for that, if people want to avail themselves, I don't know. I'm
comfortable with pushing it if you want.
Just for accuracy point, I would inquire, because the way it was stated is, I don't think that recreation controls the property except for the period for which it has the.
Yes. For the use of Jarvis Camp and any other activities, yes. What I was trying to say is that.
No, I just wanted to.
Recreation is a very small sliver of use of that parcel.
It has control only for during.
Exactly, yeah.
During Jarvis Harvest and during the camp, but the water, sewer and water retains the control.
They also schedule in, though, like, little kids' baseball and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so.
I mean,
recreational
I
use.
can't recall anything that we've, as a commission, have said, no, we are not going to allow it. And I don't know what the commission's thought would be on, swimming over the, on Saturdays and Sundays. We obviously allow for the summer camp. I think our concern would be, one, if this is going to be a recreation department program, it's all right. Do they want to have that? And also, because they already do, handle the pools, and it becomes a money issue. And I know that the commission would really not look favorably on using water retained earnings, nor I'm not sure that water ratepayers would be interested in the part of their water bill paying for swimming.
Nancy?
Yeah, I mean.
And it's not a whole lot of money. It should be, if we want to do that, it should be able to fit within, the town's funds. I think, Jim, you were talking, it was 14,000, maybe it's 20 or whatever. I think it's really a problem to go with water retained earnings.
I think there's a difference here. The water department, the water purchased the land as a resource so that we can be recharging our resources, and it's there to collect water.
So here's my point to using water retained earnings. That's why I'd recommend it, because ultimately it's going to be their call whether or not they want to use it.
But I think there's also then we have the added bonus. Because we have this land and it's a farm and what it was before, we are getting the extra bonus as a place to hold outdoor recreation activities that also benefit the town. So there's two layers of benefit, but that is not necessarily tied to the initial purchase of the land and the money that is supplying it. And then forget all of that as a nurse, as a lifeguard for 10 years and teaching swimming lessons, I think there's a public health issue that we've identified, that we can't keep that pond open our first season for the entire season. So the second season, should we add more bodies and more E. coli? No. We need to learn how to manage a pond. Never mind, we've had an entire town of lifeguards that lifeguard pools. When you start lifeguarding a pond, it's an entire different entity. So I think before, this should be supported as a public health issue, as a safety issue. There's a lot more that has to be done, not just a recreation, water earnings, and I want to make sure I'm using up their money issue. I think that is what we need to like stay on focus about, not how much we can get out of water earnings.
So, I'm sorry, so what did FinCom vote? Did they vote refer to committee?
At town meeting.
Oh, to make a recommendation.
They wanted to hear from the sewer and water commissioners on this one.
And one quick question, are the pools open on weekends?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Do we know, do the numbers drop significantly on the weekends?
They do drop.
I mean, I'd like to see, I would be interested to see what those numbers look like versus a weekday on a weekend. I mean, when I'm in this town on a weekend, there's no one here, and I just, if you're gonna be drawing from the same people that are going to the pool, and now the number is that much lower, and, you know, just adding, and the added expense, when there are options available.
So why don't we bring it back next week? It is an interesting idea.
If I could just add,
Sure.
in addition to having the, water department, sewer and water, do we know even if the recreation department wants this? I would make sure that they're involved too. We may be signing up, I mean, so far we know that Mr. Carroll and maybe some folks who've signed a petition or whatever are interested, but the folks who are actually gonna have to run the thing, let's make sure they're involved in it also.
Another option, if it doesn't move forward, but, one thing would be to try a weekend next summer. Pick a weekend, staff it, see what happens. If 3 people show up, that kind of, but if 100 people show up. I'm just throwing out an idea of something we could consider down the
Pond
road.
day, have a pond day or something.
Yeah, have a
Pond day.
pond day.
Pond day.
Okay. Item 20.
Rain and be cold or whatever that day.
So item 20 is, Mr. Carroll came in before the Finance Committee. They voted no action on this, and he was in yesterday, and he indicated he may not pursue this any further. He just more or less, a constituent came to him, complained about not being notified on a project on Stone Street when the plans changed or something, and they didn't like that they weren't notified, so.
So technically, can he withdraw it and it goes away, or could he say, I'm
Right
not really
now,
interested, and then we would
recommended
vote return to committee or
No
something?
action.
Okay, no action, okay.
So he could go forward with a amended motion, but I don't think he's gonna do that, so.
Does anyone want to hold this?
I would vote it unless we want to hold it.
Well, I'd like to hold it because if he's gonna withdraw it, then we can just vote
Give him the time.
no action next week.
Okay, that's
but-
fine.
Or
Sure.
he can just come in if he
Is it
feels
already on
strong.
the warrant?
Yep,
So we have to vote it?
yeah, you do, you either
I'd
have.
like to hear, if
You're
we're
just
gonna
saying
vote
hold
for
it.
it, I'd
Hold
like
it
to
for
hear
that.
from him if he still wants to pursue it. I'd like to hear what his thinking is behind this. It's,
We'll get a few done anyway.
well, I think there's more discussion, because if we're already following requirements for notice, but I think it's worth a discussion. If we're already following the requirements, then we would not have to go forward, but are you sitting here telling us
We're adhering to the law right now, the zoning board is.
that there could be an additional?
No. Again, the way this is worded is just a request. It's not a bylaw. It's non-binding. And
See, I think so we have to notify the abutter when it's going to zone. It's about zoning, right, or planning board?
Zoning.
And that grant it's not an amendment of the grant of the zoning board or the planning board that happens that's not getting notified. It's just a change to the plan, so that, instead of, it still has the same dimensional requirements that have been approved by planning and zoning, but they changed the plan, they could add a different roof or a different system and still comply with that previous grant. but the abutter doesn't get notified because it doesn't have to, because it,
Is
the
that what
grant,
Yeah, they didn't continue to go to the way he explained it to me, they stopped going to the zoning meetings. And so, maybe the plans were presented one way, and the houses looked one way in the initial set of plans. And by the end of the meeting, they were much different, and it's 3 houses on a 30,000 square foot lot, so each house was only 10,000 square feet. And the neighbors expected, they are nice-looking homes, they're colonial-type houses, very small houses on 10,000 square foot. So that was the big issue here, but he understands now that that's the way our zoning bylaw is. So you're calling it what you want to do.
Do you have anything else for us, Town Administrator's update?
Yes, I'll be very quick. Sorry. Andy, you mind taking one?
You'll be quick, that's like a stack
No,
of paper.
you already have most of it. The Foxborough pilot, just to follow up on that one, as you all are aware, I did provide the board with an update regarding everything occurring with the pilot update there. Mark wrote and signed a letter to the governor's office asking to be heard on multiple issues, most importantly, the request for reduced speed there. The Summer Street crossing, I was able to confirm the gates are going to be installed. I was able to confirm in writing from an MBT official. She actually explained to me that she provided Representative Dooley with the wrong information initially, because it's my understanding Mass DOT is not installing the gates, the MBTA is installing the gates, and that's where the miscommunication was for some reason.
So could I ask a quick question to that?
Yes.
Are these the gates that some citizens were asking for?
I don't have the
Ones that
details on
flash?
those
Okay.
gates. They were never
So we need to still look into
given
exactly
to
what
me.
the gate.
And I
Okay.
have reached out to that particular resident. I haven't heard back from them. Pilot start date, it is set to start on May 19th, 2019. Community outreach, I continue to ask them for the community outreach, and we included this as part of the letter to the governor. I did get a call today saying that the governor did receive the letter. It's in his hands now, so I'm hoping to get a response. I also sent the same letter to Congressman Lynch and the same letter to the Federal Railroad Administration. So I'm trying to get as many people involved, along with our state delegation on this one, and get some attention on this, because the speed limit there is a big deal, and that's something that they tell me the decision's already been made, but I'm trying to get them to reverse that decision there.
I know you're trying to get this information up on the website as well. Is all this information on the website?
This was
or we-
published on Friday, and we
Okay.
put it up there. The update to the board and the governor's letter.
Okay, great.
And Chief Carmichael's traffic analysis there. Just some paving updates for you there. We have had a conversation with Sunshine Paving. There's been a couple hiccups. They are a new contractor to town. Their owner reached out to me personally yesterday. They're back in town, hopefully tomorrow, I don't know, given this weather, to finish out the job and hopefully get everything paved and completed around September 28th. Flooding was a big issue today in town, as you may expect. David and I talked today about an area down near the donut shop on Main Street. It was a mess all over the place, and we tried to stay on top of it. It's one of those things, we get a week's worth of rain in 2 or 3 hours, and it was tough. Parking. David and I briefly talked about the final parking count just earlier tonight. I just wanted to give the board an update. I just got this map, last item in the back of your packet. Our parking count in back of Town Hall, back of the fire station, went from 187 2 or 3 years ago to 237.
Good job.
Thank you. We also got rid of all the police cruisers there and their personal vehicles, so we've relieved some of the parking issues back there. I continue to see some people park over here for commuters, and I think we're trying to get on the right track with that one. I haven't received as many complaints as we were receiving back in April, so.
I gotta say, driving through there, I had someone say, "Oh, parking's still a big problem." And I said, I told them, go look at the lot. There are sufficient parking spaces in the lot on a daily basis now, and I like going forward just to be able to show people that. And I've said it a few times, and I would like finally to have it done, is that they're all parking closest to Main Street. So all the empty spots are up near Stone Field. If we can make them put 2-hour spots along Main Street, move those people to fill the spots along near Stone Street, so that if someone's coming downtown, they know that there's always going to be a spot in that municipal parking lot. every time of day, any time of day. If they want to go to the barber shop or they want to go somewhere, there's always going to be a spot there. And the business owners, my other pet peeve is, there's several business owners that I know that there's a car there on that street every day because it's an exotic car, and he might know who he is right now, and it's there on the street every day, all day. If you own a business on Route, you shouldn't be there all day. You should be in the municipal lot or on private property, so that the business owners can have the advantage of having open spots along Main Street when someone wants to come in town and do something and spend their money downtown. That's my pet peeve for the day.
So Jim, I count 31, and I noticed this the other day when I was at Downtown Live. The fire department has 31 spaces allocated to the fire department, and I know that they have 9 men on a shift, plus lieutenants and things like that. So while I don't see a problem with the spaces inside this white line, why are these 1, 2, 3, 5 spaces allocated to the fire department when they could just be part of the regular public parking? And they would still have 26 spaces remaining.
Let me
Can you
check
talk
with
to
the chief,
Jim?
yeah.
Because I think I noticed that when there was no parking on Friday night, and I know not every night is Friday Night Live, but I just, I think 31 spots for the fire department, especially when 5 of them are outside of sort of their perimeter. I would like to see that go back to yellow.
Okay.
Go back to yellow.
Go back to yellow.
Check with Tim, but I don't see that as a problem.
Yeah.
Jim,
I
any more?
just think
Anything
visually.
else?
That's it.
Okay. Moving on. Chairman's declaration about to enter executive session. I hereby declare that under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2 and 3, to discuss strategy as it relates to negotiating a contract with non-union personnel and to discuss strategy as it relates to potential litigation. 1, to negotiate with non-union personnel Richard Mattson for a contract as DPW Director. 2, to discussion on solid waste and recycling services. 3, discussion with issues relative to Foxborough pilot MBTA training. 4, that a discussion of the foregoing in open session could compromise the purpose for executive session. And 5, that the Board of Selectmen shall return to open session at the conclusion of the executive session. I'll make a motion that the board go into executive session under General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 2, 3, and 3, for the purposes declared by the chairman, and to return to open session to vote on the DPW contract. David?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Mark? Yes. Jim?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
1 minute, I'll let you know.
Absolutely, yep. Pete, thanks for coming in tonight, by the way. I know you were a little short-staffed over there.
You guys want to sign?
Sure, yep.
Okay, so
Are
there's,
we done?
Are you done with these? We're going into executive session.
No, I understand. Are we still live?
He's turning it off right now. Pete, are we still live?